I buried my 7-year-old son on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I would discover that someone in my family murdered him. And by the end of this story, I would destroy them all. My name is Monica Morgan. I'm 35 years old, the interim CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and until 2 months ago, I was a mother. My son Daniel died from what doctors called sudden kidney failure, tragic, unexplainable. The kind of medical mystery that shatters families but leaves no one to blame. Except it wasn't a mystery. It was murder. 2 hours after I watched them lower Daniel's tiny white coffin into the ground, my phone rang. The county medical examiner's voice was tight with urgency. "Mrs. Morgan, don't react. Don't tell anyone you're hearing this. But you need to come to my office immediately. I found something in your son's toxicology report, something that changes everything. And Monica, I think you might be in danger." I drove there in a fog of confusion and terror when Dr. Cole placed that report in my hands when I saw the word poison highlighted in red when she told me the chemical found in Daniel's blood was deliberately administered over multiple days. I stopped breathing. But that was just the beginning. Because the fingerprints on the glass that delivered the poison, they belonged to my sister. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how I discovered my own family tried to murder me, how my innocent son died saving my life, and how I systematically destroyed everyone responsible. This is a story about betrayal evidence that would make your blood run cold, and a mother's revenge that left no one standing. Stick with me, because by the end you'll understand that some families don't deserve forgiveness, they deserve justice. My name is Monica Morgan. I'm 35 years old, and until 3 weeks ago I was the interim CEO of Morgan Industries and the mother of the most amazing 7-year-old boy who ever lived. Now I'm just a woman standing in front of a coffin so small it doesn't seem real, wondering how I'm supposed to keep breathing when half my soul is being lowered into the ground. The funeral director had called it a children's casket, as if using softer language would make this nightmare any less obscene. It's white gleaming in the October sun covered with lilies that Daniel would have hated because he was allergic and they made his nose itch. But I didn't have the energy to tell anyone that detail when they were planning this service. I didn't have the energy for anything except the mechanical act of putting one foot in front of the other, getting dressed in black, and somehow arriving at this cemetery without driving my car into a wall. I keep reaching for Daniel's hand. It's an unconscious gesture, the muscle memory of 7 years of motherhood. My right hand drifts down to where his small fingers would normally slip into mine, and there's nothing but empty air. Each time it happens, the reality crashes over me again. He's gone. My baby boy, who just 3 weeks ago was showing me his latest drawing of us as superheroes, is inside that white box, and I will never hold his hand again. The minister is saying something about heaven and God's plan, but the words slide past me like water off glass. I can't focus on anything except the suffocating weight in my chest that makes every breath feel like lifting a mountain. People say grief is like drowning, but that's not quite right. Drowning would be faster. This is slower, more cruel. It's like breathing through a wet cloth pressed over your face, getting just enough air to survive, but never enough to feel alive. Around me, the cemetery is full of people. Corporate associates from Morgan Industries, their faces appropriately somber as they pay respects to the interim CEO's dead child. Distant relatives who I haven't seen in years suddenly reappearing. Because death has a way of making people remember their family. Daniel's teacher, Mrs. Chen, is crying harder than I am, which should make me feel something, but doesn't. I'm beyond tears right now. I'm in that numb space where the pain is so enormous that my brain has simply shut down to protect itself. But even through the fog of grief, I notice something off about my immediate family. My mother, Patricia Morgan, stands to my left in a perfectly tailored black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She's 62, impeccably maintained with silver hair, styled in a way that suggests she visited the salon this morning. Her expression is appropriately sorrowful, but her eyes keep darting to me with a different kind of assessment. Not concern for how I'm holding up emotionally, but something more calculating. During the service, she's leaned over twice to whisper questions. Have you thought about taking a leave of absence from the company? And the board has been asking about transition plans. What should I tell them? What kind of mother asks about corporate succession at her grandson's funeral? My younger sister Rebecca stands on the other side of the casket, 32 years old, and avoiding my gaze like I'm a stranger. We've never been close. Patricia made sure of that with her relentless comparisons and favoritism when we were growing up, but I'd expected at least some genuine emotion from her today. Instead, when our eyes do meet briefly, there's something in her expression I can't identify. Not grief, exactly. Something more complicated. Guilt, maybe? Or fear. Before I can analyze it further, she looks away, fidgeting with her purse clasp in a nervous gesture I remember from childhood. My father, Richard Morgan, stands apart from both Patricia and Rebecca, as if he's not quite sure he belongs in this family tableau. He's 64, graying with the slightly stooped posture of a man who's been worn down by decades of something I've never quite understood. He keeps starting to move toward me as if to offer comfort, but Patricia's hand shoots out each time to grip his elbow and pull him back. At one point, I see him mouth the words, "I'm sorry," to me, but Patricia turns and says something sharp under her breath that makes him look at the ground like a scolded child. The dysfunction is nothing new. Our family has always been strange, marked by unspoken tensions and careful politeness that masks something darker underneath. But today, at my son's funeral, their behavior feels particularly grotesque. They're here, physically present, but they're performing grief rather than feeling it. And worse, they seem more concerned with Morgan Industries' leadership structure than with the fact that a 7-year-old boy is dead. As the minister concludes with the standard ashes to ashes prayers, my mind drifts against my will to the days before Daniel died. I've tried not to think about it, tried to accept the doctor's explanation that sometimes these things just happen, that children can have hidden medical conditions that strike without warning. But standing here watching them lower my son into the earth, the memories push forward with uncomfortable clarity. Daniel had been fine on a Monday. Happy, energetic, begging me to take him to the park after I finished work. I'd promised we'd go on the weekend because I had a critical merger presentation to prepare. He'd pouted, but accepted it the way he always did when work pulled me away. I'd felt guilty, but told myself it was temporary, that once I secured the permanent CEO position, I'd have more flexibility, more time for him. By Wednesday, he was complaining of stomach pain. I'd given him children's Tylenol and scheduled a doctor's appointment for Friday, thinking it was probably something he ate at school. Thursday, the pain got worse. He was vomiting, couldn't keep anything down. I'd taken him to urgent care where they'd run some tests and said it looked like a stomach virus. "Keep him hydrated," the doctor had said. "These things usually resolve in 48 hours. By Friday night, Daniel couldn't walk without help. He was confused, disoriented, asking me questions that didn't make sense. I'd rushed him to the emergency room where the doctors had immediately admitted him. The tests came back showing severe kidney failure, both kidneys suddenly shutting down with no clear cause. They'd tried dialysis, tried every intervention, but his small body couldn't recover. 36 hours after we arrived at the hospital, my beautiful boy was gone. Acute kidney failure secondary to unknown viral infection, the death certificate said. A medical mystery. Tragic but unexplainable. Except there's a memory I can't shake, something that's been nagging at the edges of my consciousness for weeks. The Tuesday night before Daniel got sick, Rebecca had stopped by my house unannounced. That in itself was unusual. My sister rarely visited unless she needed something. She'd brought a large container of homemade soup, claiming she'd made too much, and thought I could use a hot meal since I was working myself to death. I remember being surprised because Rebecca doesn't cook. She's always been the type to order takeout or go to restaurants. But I'd been too exhausted to question it, too grateful for one less thing to worry about. I'd put the soup in the refrigerator, planning to heat it up for dinner, but then Daniel had appeared in the kitchen, drawn by the smell. "Mommy, can I have some? Please, I'm so hungry and it smells so good." I'd been about to say no. The soup was supposed to be my dinner, but his eager little face had melted my resistance. Okay, baby, you can have mine. I'll make myself a sandwich. He'd eaten the entire bowl enthusiastically, saying it was the best soup he'd ever tasted. 3 days later, he started showing symptoms. I shake my head, trying to dislodge the thought. It's grief making me paranoid, making me look for patterns where there are none. Soup doesn't cause kidney failure. The doctors said it was a virus. I'm just a devastated mother trying to make sense of senseless tragedy by inventing connections that don't exist. The service ends. People begin filing past me, offering condolences that sound like white noise. Someone squeezes my shoulder. Someone else tells me Daniel is in a better place, which makes me want to scream because there is no place better for a 7-year-old than alive with his mother. I nod and murmur thank yous mechanically, going through the motions because that's what people expect. As the crowd disperses toward their cars, I stand alone for a moment beside the grave, looking down at the white casket one last time. My phone buzzes in my purse. I almost ignore it. Who could possibly need something from me right now? But something makes me check. The caller ID makes my heart skip County Medical Examiner's office. I stare at the screen confused. Why would the medical examiner be calling me now, 2 hours after the funeral? Daniel's autopsy was completed weeks ago. The death certificate has been issued. Everything is finished. Unless it's not. My hand trembles as I answer the call. Hello. The voice on the other end is urgent, almost whispered. Mrs. Morgan, this is Dr. Cole from the medical examiner's office. I need you to come to my office immediately. Don't tell anyone, especially not your family. I found something in Daniel's final toxicology report. Something that changes everything. My throat goes dry as Dr. Cole continues speaking, his voice dropping even lower as if he's afraid someone might overhear despite being at a funeral where he couldn't possibly be. Mrs. Morgan, I cannot discuss this over the phone. You need to come to my office right now, this afternoon. As soon as you can get here. There's a pause, and I hear him take a breath before adding the words that turn my blood to ice. And Monica, do not tell your family you're coming here. Don't tell anyone. This is critical. I don't understand. I manage to say, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. Daniel's autopsy was finished weeks ago. The death certificate said kidney failure from a viral infection. What could have changed? I can't explain on the phone, Dr. Cole repeats, and there's something in his tone that's almost apologetic, but also utterly firm. Just come. Alone. I'll be waiting. Before I can ask anything else, he adds one more sentence that makes my legs feel weak. Mrs. Morgan, I believe you may be in danger. Please be careful and please hurry. The call ends, leaving me standing beside my son's grave with my phone pressed to my ear and my mind spinning. Danger. What kind of danger? And why would discussing Daniel's toxicology report put me at risk? None of this makes sense, but the urgency in Dr. Cole's voice was unmistakable. This is a man who examines dead bodies for a living, who delivers terrible news to families as part of his daily routine. If something has shaken him enough to make him call me at my son's funeral and insist I come immediately, it must be catastrophic. I look around the cemetery, suddenly hyper-aware of my family still lingering near their cars in the parking area. Patricia is talking to one of the board members from Morgan Industries, her hand on his arm in that way she has of making every interaction feel strategic. Rebecca is checking her phone, her face illuminated by the screen. Richard stands alone, staring at nothing. They all look so normal, so ordinary. The paranoid thought that crosses my mind seems insane. Could one of them have something to do with why Dr. Cole wants me to come alone? I shake my head, trying to clear the ridiculous suspicion. Grief is making me irrational. But Dr. Cole's warning echoes in my mind, don't tell your family. There must be a reason he specified that. I walk to my car without saying goodbye to anyone, which probably seems rude, but I can't bring myself to care. My hands shake as I start the engine and pull out of the cemetery parking lot, and I have to force myself to drive carefully because my instinct is to floor the accelerator and get to Dr. Cole's office as fast as possible. The medical examiner's building is across town, about 15 minutes away in normal traffic, and every second of that drive feels like an eternity. The world outside my car window looks wrong somehow, as if I'm seeing it through distorted glass. Traffic lights change from red to green and back again. Pedestrians cross at intersections absorbed in their phones, and their lives completely unaware that my entire reality might be about to shatter for a second time. A woman pushes a stroller past a coffee shop, and I have to look away because the sight of that baby carriage is like a knife to the chest. 3 weeks ago, I had a son. 3 weeks ago, I was still a mother with a future that included soccer games and school plays and teaching him to drive someday. Now I'm driving to a medical examiner's office to learn God knows what about how my child died. My mind won't stop cycling through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was there something wrong with Daniel that I missed? Some genetic condition I should have caught earlier? Did the hospital make a mistake in his treatment? But none of those scenarios explain why Dr. Cole would tell me not to inform my family or why he thinks I'm in danger. The word danger keeps repeating in my head like a drumbeat. Danger from what? From whom? I grip the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles have gone white and my hands are starting to cramp, but I can't seem to loosen my hold. It's as if the steering wheel is the only solid thing in a world that's suddenly turned liquid and uncertain. The familiar streets of my city look foreign and threatening, shadows seeming darker than they should be. Every car behind me feeling like it might be following me, even though I know that's paranoid thinking. When I finally pull into the parking lot behind the medical examiner's office, I sit in my car for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. The building is a squat gray concrete structure that looks exactly like what it is, a place where they bring the dead to determine how they died. I've never been here before. There was no reason to come during Daniel's autopsy process. Everything was handled remotely, papers signed electronically, the death certificate delivered by mail. Now, looking at this grim building, I realize I should have come. I should have demanded to see everything to understand exactly what happened to my son. But I'd been too devastated, too broken, and I'd trusted the doctors when they said it was just a tragic medical mystery. Trusted. That word feels loaded now, heavy with implications I don't want to examine. I force myself out of the car and walk toward the side entrance, the one Dr. Cole mentioned on the phone. Before I can even reach for the door, it opens, and Dr. Cole himself is standing there. He's in his mid-60s, tall and lean with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, wearing his white medical examiner's coat over a button-down shirt and tie. His face is drawn with an expression I can't quite read, concern certainly, but also something that might be anger or even fear. "Mrs. Morgan," he says quietly, glancing past me as if checking to make sure I'm alone. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Please follow me." He doesn't lead me to a main office or examination room. Instead, we walk down a corridor with fluorescent lights that hum slightly past doors marked with bureaucratic labels like storage and records, until we reach a small conference room at the very end of the hall. It has no windows, just 4 walls painted institutional beige, a rectangular table, and several chairs. On the table sits a manila folder thick with papers, closed but somehow ominous in its stillness. Dr. Cole gestures for me to sit, and I do, my legs grateful to no longer have to hold me up. He sits across from me, his hands folded on the table, and for a moment he just looks at me with an expression of deep sympathy mixed with something harder to define. Dread, maybe. Or reluctance. "Mrs. Morgan." He begins, his voice careful and measured. "7 days ago, during Daniel's autopsy, I noticed some irregularities in his tissue samples and organ deterioration patterns, things that didn't quite match the preliminary diagnosis of viral-induced kidney failure. As a precaution, I ordered a comprehensive rush toxicology screening. Those results came back this morning." He reaches for the manila folder, his hand resting on it but not yet opening it, as if he's giving me one last moment before everything changes. "What I'm about to show you is going to be extremely difficult to process. I want you to know that I've triple-checked these results. I've had them verified by 2 independent labs. There is no mistake." He opens the folder and slides the first page toward me. It's a toxicology report dense with medical terminology and chemical formulas I don't understand. But I don't need to understand the technical details because several lines are highlighted in bright red marker, and even I can read what they say. The words on the page swim before my eyes as I try to make sense of what I'm seeing. Ethylene glycol detected at 487 ml/dl reads one line. Toxic metabolites consistent with multi-day exposure reads another. I look up at Dr. Cole, my brain refusing to process what these clinical terms actually mean. I don't understand, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. What is ethylene glycol? Is that some kind of medication? Dr. Cole's expression is grave as he leans forward, his hands clasped together on the table. Ethylene glycol is a toxic chemical compound. Mrs. Morgan, it's the main ingredient in automotive antifreeze. He pauses, letting that sink in before continuing. Your son was poisoned. These concentration levels in his blood are not consistent with accidental exposure. Based on the metabolite markers, we found Daniel ingested this substance multiple times over a period of 7 to 10 days before his death. The room tilts sideways, and for a moment, I think I might pass out. Poisoned. Daniel was poisoned. Not a mysterious virus. Not a tragic medical fluke. Someone deliberately fed my 7-year-old son antifreeze until his kidneys shut down and he died. That's not possible, I hear myself saying, though my voice sounds like it's coming from very far away. How would he even get access to antifreeze? We don't keep that in the house. He was never in the garage unsupervised. There has to be some mistake. There's no mistake, Dr. Cole says gently but firmly. I've had these results verified by 2 independent laboratories. The presence of ethylene glycol and its metabolites in Daniel's tissue samples is unequivocal. He pulls out another page from the folder, this one showing a timeline with medical annotations. Look at this progression. The initial exposure likely occurred around 10 days before his death. The chemical begins to metabolize in the body, breaking down into glycolic acid and oxalic acid. These compounds are what actually cause the damage. They crystallize in the kidneys, essentially shredding the delicate filtration structures from the inside out. I stare at the timeline, seeing Daniel's final days mapped out in clinical detail. The stomach pain that started on Wednesday, the vomiting on Thursday, the confusion and weakness by Friday. Each symptom corresponds to a stage of poisoning that I now realize was entirely preventable if only I'd known what was happening. But how could I have known the symptoms looked exactly like a stomach flu, which is what the urgent care doctor said it was? The insidious nature of ethylene glycol poisoning. Dr. Cole continues, his voice taking on the measured tone of someone delivering a lecture, though I can hear the anger underneath. Is that it mimics common illnesses in its early stages. Stomach pain, nausea, lethargy, these look like viral infections. By the time the kidney damage becomes apparent, it's often too late, especially in a child. An adult might survive with aggressive treatment if caught early enough. But Daniel's body was too small to withstand this level of toxic assault. Something about the way he phrases that last part makes me look up sharply. What do you mean, an adult might survive? Doctor. Cole meets my eyes, and I see something in his expression that makes my skin go cold. Mrs. Morgan, the concentration of ethylene glycol we found in Daniel's system would cause severe illness in an adult, weeks of hospitalization, kidney damage, requiring dialysis, neurological effects. But it likely wouldn't be fatal with proper medical intervention. For a child weighing only 48 pounds, however, that same dosage was lethal. He leans forward, his voice dropping. Based on these numbers, I don't believe Daniel was the intended target. I believe someone calculated a dose meant to incapacitate an adult, and your son ingested it instead. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Someone tried to poison me. Someone wanted to make me sick enough that I couldn't function, couldn't work, couldn't fulfill my role as interim CEO. And my sweet, innocent Daniel died in my place because he ate food that was meant for me. Who would do this? I whisper. But even as I ask the question, My mind is racing back to that Tuesday evening, to Rebecca standing in my doorway with the container of soup insisting I needed to eat because I was working too hard. Rebecca, who never cooked, who never showed concern for my well-being, who suddenly appeared with homemade food and that strange expression on her face when I told her Daniel had eaten it instead. Dr. Cole is pulling something else from his folder now, a clear evidence bag containing what looks like a drinking glass. There are faint traces of orange residue inside, and on the exterior I can see the smudged outline of fingerprints and what might be lipstick marks near the rim. We collected this glass from your kitchen during the preliminary investigation before we knew Daniel's death was suspicious, Dr. Cole explains. It was one of several items we routinely document in cases of unexplained death. When the toxicology came back positive for ethylene glycol, I had our forensics team analyze everything we'd collected from your home. He slides the evidence bag across the table toward me, and I find myself staring at it as if it's a snake that might strike. This glass tested positive for ethylene glycol residue. The concentration suggests it was mixed with orange juice, likely to mask the taste, and we were able to lift clear fingerprints from the surface. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. I don't want to ask the next question because some part of me already knows the answer, but I force the words out anyway. Whose prints? Dr. Cole's expression is a mixture of sympathy and something darker, anger maybe, or disgust at what he's about to tell me. He pulls out one final document, a fingerprint analysis report with 2 sets of prints side by side. One set is labeled Evidence Item 7B Drinking Glass, and the other is labeled Comparison Sample Rebecca Miller, DOB, 06-15-1993. These fingerprints belong to your sister, Rebecca, Dr. Cole says quietly. She handled this glass extensively, and Mrs. Morgan, the pattern of prints suggests she was the one who prepared the contents and likely served it. The lipstick traces on the rim also match samples we obtained from items in her vehicle during a follow-up investigation I initiated yesterday. I can't breathe. The room is spinning, and I can't get enough air into my lungs. My sister, my own sister, poisoned my son. She brought that soup to my house. She put antifreeze in a drink she watched Daniel deteriorate and said nothing, did nothing, let him die. The woman who shared my childhood, who I'd protected from our mother's worst impulses when we were young, who I'd helped financially when she needed it, she murdered my child. Rebecca, I whisper, and the name tastes like ashes in my mouth. Dr. Cole nods grimly. I've already contacted the police. Detectives are being briefed as we speak. But Mrs. Morgan, there's something else you need to understand. Ethylene glycol isn't easy to obtain or administer without knowledge. Someone planned this, carefully calculated the dosage, chose a delivery method that would be difficult to detect. Your sister may have delivered the poison, but I don't believe she acted alone. The revelation that Rebecca might not have acted alone barely registers because I'm still trying to process the fact that she acted at all. My mind keeps circling back to that evidence bag, to those fingerprints that Dr. Cole says belong to my sister. I reach out and touch the plastic surface of the bag, my fingers trembling, as if physical contact might make this nightmare more real, or perhaps prove it's all a horrible mistake. I need you to understand what these fingerprints tell us. Doctor, Cole says, pulling the evidence bag back toward himself and pointing to specific details I can barely focus on. These aren't smudged or partial prints. They're clear, complete impressions on multiple surfaces of the glass, the bowl, the stem, the base. This indicates Rebecca handled this glass extensively, deliberately. She wasn't just casually touching something in your kitchen. The positioning of the prints suggests she was the one who poured liquid into it, who held it while mixing something, who likely placed it somewhere for Daniel to find. I force myself to focus on his words, though every syllable feels like a knife. But Rebecca barely ever came to my house. I hear myself saying, my voice sounding strange and hollow. We weren't close. We haven't been close since we were children. Our mother made sure of that with her constant comparisons always pitting us against each other. Rebecca only visited when she needed something money usually, or a favor related to her position at Morgan Industries. She never just dropped by to be sisterly. She certainly never helped herself to dishes in my kitchen. Dr. Cole nods slowly as if this information confirms something he'd already suspected. That's significant, Mrs. Morgan. It means when Rebecca came to your home with that soup, it wasn't a casual visit. It was purposeful, planned. He taps the forensic report. The ethylene glycol was mixed with orange juice in this glass. Orange juice is slightly acidic and sweet, which would help mask the chemical taste of antifreeze. Whoever prepared this knew what they were doing. They chose a delivery method that a child might actually drink without immediately detecting something was wrong. A child. My child. I close my eyes, fighting against the wave of nausea that threatens to overwhelm me. When I open them again, Doctor, Cole is showing me another page of analysis, this one filled with numbers and calculations that make my head spin. Look at this dosage calculation, he says, his finger tracking down a column of figures. Based on the concentration of ethylene glycol we found in Daniel's tissues and the metabolic breakdown timeline, we can estimate that the total amount ingested was approximately 50 milliliters over multiple exposures. For an adult woman weighing between 120 and 140 pounds, which I understand is approximately your weight range, this dosage would cause severe acute kidney injury, neurological symptoms including confusion and disorientation, possible seizures, and would require immediate hospitalization and dialysis treatment for a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks, possibly longer. My weight range. Someone calculated a poison dose specifically for my body weight. The clinical precision of it makes my skin crawl, Doctor. Cole continues, his voice taking on an edge of anger I haven't heard before. During those weeks of hospitalization and recovery, you would have been completely incapacitated. Unable to work, unable to make decisions, possibly unconscious for part of that time. For someone in a high-stakes corporate position, that kind of sudden medical crisis would have immediate consequences. Am I correct in understanding that you're currently serving as interim CEO of Morgan Industries? Yes, I whisper. I was appointed 3 months ago when my grandfather had a health scare and had to step back temporarily. The board has been evaluating my performance to decide whether to make the appointment permanent. There's a critical vote scheduled for next month. And if you had suddenly become hospitalized with mysterious kidney failure 3 months into your tenure, unable to fulfill your duties for weeks on end, what would have happened to that CEO position? The answer is obvious, and it makes me feel sick. The board would have appointed someone else. They couldn't leave the company without leadership during a critical merger negotiation. They would have chosen the next most qualified person in the family. I swallow hard against the bile rising in my throat. Rebecca. She's vice president of marketing. She's been with the company for 8 years. She would have been the logical choice. So your sister had motive, Dr. Cole says quietly. She had access to you through family connections. She had the opportunity when she brought food to your home, and now we have physical evidence, her fingerprints on the glass that contained poison meant for you. My mind is reeling, trying to reject what seems undeniable. I think back to that evening 8 days before Daniel died, forcing myself to remember details I'd barely registered at the time because I'd been so exhausted, so focused on the merger documents spread across my desk. It had been late, maybe 8:30 at night, and I'd been surviving on coffee and protein bars for 2 days straight. The doorbell had rung, and I'd been annoyed at the interruption until I saw Rebecca standing there with a large thermal container. I was in the neighborhood, she'd said, though I remember now that she lives on the opposite side of town and had no reason to be anywhere near my house. I made too much soup and thought you could use a hot meal. You're working yourself to death, Monica. There had been something odd in her voice when she said that last part, an edge I'd attributed to sisterly concern, but now recognize as something else entirely. What had it been? Resentment, guilt, anticipation. I'd taken the soup, thanked her, and tried to get rid of her quickly because I had a conference call in 10 minutes. She'd lingered for a moment, looking past me into the house, as if checking whether I was alone, whether Daniel was there. I remember her asking, "Where's Daniel?" and me answering that he was at a sleepover at his friend Tyler's house, not due back until the next afternoon. She'd nodded, handed me the container, and left without the usual small talk. Later that evening, after my conference call ended around 10, I'd finally heated up the soup. I was about to eat it when Daniel had come home early. Tyler had gotten sick and his mother had called me to come get Daniel, but I'd been on the call and hadn't heard my phone. Tyler's father had just driven Daniel home instead. My son had walked into the kitchen just as I was sitting down with the bowl, and his face had lit up. "That smells so good, Mommy. Can I have some?" "Please, I'm starving and they only had pizza at Tyler's and you know I don't like pepperoni." I'd hesitated because I was hungry and exhausted, but Daniel had looked at me with those enormous brown eyes, and I'd caved like I always did. "Okay, baby. You can have this bowl. I'll make myself a sandwich." He'd hugged me, called me the best mom in the world, and eaten every drop of that soup while telling me about his evening at Tyler's house. 3 days later, the stomach pains started. 4 days later, he was vomiting. 7 days later, he was dead. Sitting in Dr. Cole's office, I realized with crystal clarity that Daniel wasn't supposed to be home that night. Rebecca had checked that he was at a sleepover. She'd calculated the timing so I would be alone, exhausted, hungry. I would have eaten that soup without question, and by the next morning, I would have been sick. Within days, I would have been hospitalized. Within a week, the board would have replaced me. But Daniel came home early. Daniel ate the soup. Daniel died instead. A memory surfaces from years ago, something I'd completely forgotten until this moment. A family dinner when I was maybe 12 and Rebecca was 7. There had been an argument about inheritance, about grandfather's will, about who would run the company someday. My grandfather had lost his temper, unusual for him, and said something that had silenced the entire table. "This family has poison in its blood. Some people here would kill for power." At the time, I'd thought he was speaking metaphorically. Now I understand he was speaking literally, and he was right. I barely remember leaving Dr. Cole's office. He said something about police detectives, about next steps, about not confronting anyone until law enforcement is involved. But his words wash over me like water. I nod mechanically, take the folder of documents he insists I keep copies of, and somehow navigate my way back through those fluorescent-lit corridors to the parking lot exit. The afternoon sun is blinding after the windowless conference room, and I stand there blinking stupidly for a moment before locating my car. I make it to the driver's seat. I close the door. I sit there with the folder of evidence in my lap, staring at nothing, and then something inside me breaks wide open. The sound that comes out of my throat doesn't sound human. It's raw and animalistic, a howl of anguish that's been building since the moment Daniel took his last breath, but has been trapped inside me, unable to escape past the numbness and shock. Now it tears free and I'm sobbing so hard I can't breathe. My chest heaving, my hands clawing at the steering wheel, as if I could somehow anchor myself against the tidal wave of pain trying to drown me. My son is dead. My baby boy who trusted everyone who saw the good in people, who ate his aunt's poisoned soup because he thought she was being kind, he's gone. And it's my fault. If I hadn't been so consumed with work, so focused on proving myself worthy of that CEO position, maybe I would have questioned why Rebecca suddenly showed up with homemade food. Maybe I would have noticed something off in her demeanor. Maybe I would have eaten that damn soup myself like I was supposed to, and Daniel would still be alive and I would be the one in the ground. But even as I spiral into that self-blame, something else begins to rise through the grief, like magma pushing up through cracks in the earth. It's hot and dangerous and absolutely focused rage. Not the diffuse anger of helpless frustration, but a cold, purposeful fury that crystallizes every scattered piece of my shattered heart into something sharp enough to cut. They killed my son. Rebecca brought poison into my home and fed it to my child, and Dr. Cole said she didn't act alone, which means my mother is probably involved, maybe my father too. My own family looked at 7-year-old Daniel, bright, loving, innocent Daniel, and decided he was acceptable collateral damage in their scheme to steal what I'd earned. I wipe my face roughly with the back of my hand, smearing tears and probably mascara across my cheeks, and I make a decision that feels like stepping through a doorway into a different version of myself. The grief doesn't disappear. It will never disappear, but it alchemizes into something I can use. Fuel, weapon, absolute determination. I will destroy everyone who did this, I say aloud to the empty car, my voice hoarse but steady. I will erase them from this earth. As I sit there breathing hard, trying to regain some semblance of control, my mind drifts unbidden to memories I haven't examined in years. I was 8 years old when Rebecca was born, old enough to remember how everything changed overnight. Before her arrival, I'd been the center of my parents' attention, especially my mother's. Patricia had been attentive, if not warm, involved in my school activities, present at my piano recitals. But the moment Rebecca came home from the hospital, it was as if I became invisible. I remember standing in the doorway of the nursery, watching my mother coo over the new baby, with an expression of pure adoration I'd never seen directed at me. When I'd asked if I could hold my new sister, Patricia had said, "Not now, Monica. You might drop her. You're too clumsy." I was 8. I wasn't clumsy. But that became the pattern. Rebecca was precious and delicate, requiring constant care and attention, while I was expected to be independent and responsible far beyond my years. As we grew older, the favoritism became impossible to ignore. Rebecca got the larger bedroom with the window seat and built-in bookshelves. I got the smaller room that had been a sewing space. Rebecca received new clothes for each school year, while I wore hand-me-downs from cousins. When Rebecca threw tantrums, Patricia soothed and comforted. When I expressed frustration, I was told I was being dramatic and needed to control myself better. The worst part was how Patricia weaponized every comparison. "Why can't you be more agreeable like Rebecca?" "Rebecca doesn't talk back." "Your sister knows how to be grateful." It created a rift between us that never healed. I learned to stop competing for affection I would never receive, and instead threw myself into academics and eventually into building a career. Which I see now with sickening clarity only made Patricia resent me more. I remember the day I got my acceptance letter to Stanford with a full scholarship. I'd been so proud, so excited. I'd run to show my mother, thinking surely this achievement would finally earn her approval. Patricia had glanced at the letter, handed it back to me, and said, "Well, at least you won't cost us tuition money. We'll need to save for Rebecca's education. She's not as academically inclined as you, so she'll need our financial support." Not congratulations, not pride, just relief that I wouldn't be a financial burden and concern that Rebecca might need more resources. That was 27 years ago, and I can still feel the sting of it, the way my excitement had curdled into something bitter and hard in my chest. Every achievement after that received similar treatment. My college graduation. "That's nice, dear." My first job at Morgan Industries. "Your grandfather gave you that position because of family connections, not merit." My promotion to vice president. Rebecca could have had that job if she'd wanted it. And finally, 3 months ago, when grandfather appointed me interim CEO, Patricia's response had been silence. Just cold, assessing silence and an expression I couldn't read, but now understand was calculation. She was already planning to take it from me. She'd probably been planning it for years, just waiting for the right opportunity. My father, Richard, disappeared into himself somewhere during my childhood, becoming more ghost than parent. I used to think he was just weak, dominated by Patricia's stronger personality. But now, I wonder if he knew what she was capable of, and chose cowardice over confrontation. That might make him just as guilty. I pull out my phone with shaking hands and open my photo gallery, scrolling until I find the last picture of Daniel. It's from 2 weeks before he died. He's holding up a drawing he'd made in art class, stick figures of the two of us wearing capes and masks flying through the air. "Me and Mommy as superheroes," he'd explained proudly. "Because you're my hero, Mom. You're so strong and brave, and you help so many people with your job." The image blurs as fresh tears fill my eyes, but I blink them away furiously. I won't cry anymore, not now. Crying is for grief without purpose. What I feel now is grief with absolute purpose. I failed to protect you, baby, I whisper to the photo. I was so busy trying to prove myself to people who never deserved my effort that I didn't see the danger right in front of us. But I promise you, I swear on everything I am, I will make them pay. Every single person who hurt you, who valued money and power over your precious life, they're going to lose everything. And then they're going to prison. I sit there for another moment, feeling something settle into place inside me. Something hard and unbreakable. A mother who has lost her child and knows exactly who took him is the most dangerous person in the world because she has nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. I'm about to start the car when a thought strikes me with the force of revelation. The Ring camera. I have a Ring doorbell camera system that records everyone who approaches my front door. It would have captured Rebecca's visit that night. I'd forgotten about it completely in the chaos of Daniel's illness and death, but the footage should still be stored in the cloud. My hands are already pulling up the app before I've fully processed what this means. I drive home faster than I should, running 2 yellow lights and barely registering the other cars on the road. My mind is racing ahead to what that Ring camera footage might show. I installed the system 18 months ago after someone broke into a neighbor's house 3 doors down. It was one of those decisions you make thinking you're being responsible, never imagining you'd actually need it for anything beyond package delivery confirmation. Now it might be the key to proving exactly what my sister did. The moment I'm through my front door, I grab my laptop from the home office and pull up the Ring app. My hands shaking so badly I have to try 3 times to enter my password correctly. The interface loads with agonizing slowness, showing the grid of my 3 cameras, front door, back door, and garage. I navigate to the timeline feature and scroll back to 8 days before Daniel's death, the evening Rebecca brought the soup. The timeline shows activity throughout the day. The mail carrier at 2 p.m., a delivery driver at 4:15 p.m., me coming home from work at 5:40 p.m. Then, nothing. There's a completely blank section where Rebecca's visit should be. I zoom in on the specific time frame, feeling my stomach twist into knots. The timestamp shows the system went offline at exactly 6:47 p.m. and didn't come back online until 9:53 p.m. 3 hours and 6 minutes of blank space, exactly when Rebecca was at my house. The app displays a small notation, "System manually disabled by administrator." But I never disabled it. I remember that evening with crystal clarity now that I'm forcing myself to examine it. I was in my home office from 6 p.m. until nearly 11 p.m. on back-to-back conference calls about the merger. My laptop and phone were both in use the entire time. I couldn't have disabled the security system even if I'd wanted to, which I hadn't. Someone else accessed it remotely and shut it down. This wasn't a spontaneous decision by Rebecca to poison me. This was planned meticulously enough that someone knew to eliminate the digital evidence before she even arrived at my door. The sophistication of it makes my skin crawl. How long had they been planning this? Days, weeks longer? I stare at the screen, trying to figure out what to do with this information. I'm not tech-savvy enough to trace IP addresses or investigate remote access logs, but I know someone who is. James Wu has been Morgan Industries' IT director for 6 years, and I've helped him navigate corporate politics more than once when my grandfather was ready to replace him over budget disputes. He owes me favors, and right now I'm prepared to call every single one of them in. I dial his personal cell phone, and he answers on the 3rd ring. "Monica, I'm so sorry about Daniel. I was at the funeral but didn't want to intrude." "James, I need your help with something urgent and confidential." I interrupt, my voice sharper than I intend. "Can you trace who remotely disabled my home Ring camera system 8 days ago?" There's a pause, and I can hear the shift in his tone from sympathy to professional alertness. "That's an unusual request. Is everything okay?" "No, everything is very much not okay. Can you do it or not?" "Yeah, I can do it. Ring systems log administrative access attempts. Give me your account credentials and about 2 hours. I'll call you back." I provide the information and then pace my house like a caged animal, unable to sit still. unable to focus on anything except the growing certainty that what I'm about to learn will be worse than I already know. 2 hours feels like 2 days, but finally my phone rings. "Monica, I've got the information," James says, and something in his voice tells me he's discovered something disturbing. The remote access came from IP address 192.168.1.47, which traces back to a residential location registered to Patricia and Richard Morgan at 2847 Oakmont Drive. That's your parents' house, isn't it? The room tilts sideways. "Yes," I managed to say. "The login credentials used were your administrative credentials, the backup ones you would have set up when you first installed the system. Someone with access to those credentials disabled your cameras from your parents' home approximately 15 minutes before Rebecca arrived at your house and re-enabled them 3 hours later." My mother. "My own mother disabled my security cameras so Rebecca could deliver poison to my door without being recorded. This wasn't Rebecca acting alone in a moment of jealous impulse. This was a coordinated conspiracy between at least 2 people, possibly 3 if my father knew. They planned it together, executed it together, and then watched my son die together without saying a word." "James, is there any footage at all from that time period? Any backup or buffer that might have been saved before the shutdown?" "Let me check the cloud storage logs," he says, and I hear keyboard clicking. Ring cameras upload to the cloud in real time before the local feed is accessible. Sometimes there's a buffer period where footage gets captured before a manual shutdown takes effect. Give me a minute. More clicking, longer this time. "Okay, I've got something. There's 47 seconds of footage from the front door camera that uploaded before the shutdown completed. I'm downloading it now and sending it to your email. Should be there in about 30 seconds. My laptop chimes with the incoming email before James even finishes his sentence. I open the video file with trembling hands, and the footage fills my screen. The timestamp reads 6:46:38 p.m. Rebecca walks up my front sidewalk carrying a large thermal bag, the kind used to keep food hot during transport. But it's her body language that makes my breath catch. She's glancing over her shoulder, repeatedly checking to see if anyone's watching from neighboring houses. When she reaches my door, she pauses for a long moment, her hand raised to ring the bell, but not pressing it yet, as if steeling herself for what she's about to do. Then I open the door, and for just a split second, maybe a quarter of a second, before Rebecca's face rearranges itself into a smile, I see her real expression. It's not sisterly concern or affection. It's something cold and determined mixed with what I can only describe as disgust, as if she's looking at something revolting that she has to force herself to touch. Then the smile slides into place, artificial and bright, and she says something I can't hear because the video has no audio. The timestamp reads 6:47:02 p.m. 4 seconds later, the feed goes dark as the system is disabled remotely. I watch the 47 seconds of footage 3 more times, studying every detail. Rebecca's furtive glances, her hesitation at the door, that expression of cold determination. This is not the face of someone bringing a thoughtful meal to an overworked sister. This is the face of someone delivering poison. My phone buzzes with a text message, and I glance at the screen expecting it to be James with follow-up information. But the number is unfamiliar, no name attached, just a string of digits I don't recognize. The message reads, "Check your sister's trash bins before tomorrow morning's pickup. You'll want to see what she's throwing away." I stare at the text message for a full minute, my mind racing through implications. Someone out there knows what Rebecca did. Someone is helping me, feeding me information. But who? And how do they know what's in my sister's trash? The number is completely unfamiliar, and when I try calling it back, it goes straight to a generic voicemail that doesn't identify the owner. I consider texting back, demanding to know who this is, but something stops me. Whoever sent this message clearly wants to remain anonymous, and right now I need allies more than I need answers about their identity. I check the time, 9:47 p.m. on Tuesday night. My mind clicks into strategic mode, the same analytical thinking I use in business negotiations. Trash pickup in Rebecca's neighborhood happens early Wednesday mornings. I remember this because she used to complain about it when she first moved into that house 3 years ago, saying the garbage trucks woke her up at an ungodly hour. If there's evidence in her trash bins and I don't retrieve it tonight, it will be gone forever, crushed and buried in a landfill by tomorrow afternoon. But I can't just drive to Rebecca's house right now and start rifling through her garbage. Even in my current state of rage and desperation, I know that would be a mistake. Trespassing on private property to search someone's trash could compromise any evidence I find, make it inadmissible in court. I learned that from a true crime documentary I watched with Daniel one evening when he was fascinated by detective work. The memory of him sitting next to me on the couch asking endless questions about how police solve crimes nearly breaks me. But I force it down. I'll have time to grieve later. Right now, I need to think like a strategist. The documentary mentioned something about trash law, about how once garbage is placed on the curb for public collection, it's considered abandoned property. The owner has relinquished any expectation of privacy, which means anyone can legally search it. But the timing has to be right. It has to be after the trash is put out for collection, but before it's actually taken away, which means I need to be there when the garbage truck arrives at Rebecca's house tomorrow morning. I spend the next hour researching, confirming what I half remember from that documentary. Then I drive to a forensics supply store that's open late, the kind of place that caters to private investigators and crime scene enthusiasts. I buy latex gloves, evidence bags, and a small camera for documentation. The clerk doesn't ask questions, just rings up my purchase with bored efficiency. By the time I get home, it's nearly midnight, but I'm too wired to sleep. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. and lie in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios, planning exactly what I'll say to the sanitation workers. At 5:15 Wednesday morning, I'm in my car with a thermos of coffee I won't drink, driving through the dark streets toward Rebecca's neighborhood. The city feels different at this hour, emptier and somehow more honest, stripped of its daytime pretenses. I park 3 houses down from Rebecca's address, far enough that I won't be immediately visible if she happens to look out a window, but close enough that I have a clear view of her driveway. The neighborhood is quiet. A few lights are on in houses where early risers are starting their days, but most homes are still dark. I watch a man in running gear jog past, earbuds and completely absorbed in his workout. A woman in nurse's scrubs gets into her car and drives away, probably heading to an early hospital shift. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that I'm sitting here preparing to search through trash for evidence of murder. At 6:15 a.m. exactly, I hear the rumble of the garbage truck turning onto Rebecca's street. I watch it work its way down the block, the mechanical arm lifting bins and dumping their contents into the truck's compactor. My heart rate picks up as it gets closer to Rebecca's house. 2 houses away, 1 house away. Then the truck stops in Rebecca's driveway, and the workers, 2 men in fluorescent safety vests, hop out to manually wheel her bins to the truck. This is my moment. I get out of my car and walk quickly toward them, forcing my expression into something pleasant and slightly apologetic. "Excuse me," I call out, keeping my voice friendly and urgent, but not panicked. "I'm so sorry to bother you guys this early, but I think my sister accidentally threw away some really important documents in that bin. Tax papers, that sort of thing. Would it be possible for me to check through it real quick before you dump it?" The workers exchange glances. One of them, a younger guy with a scraggly beard, looks skeptical. The other, older with gray hair visible under his cap, seems more sympathetic. I pull out my wallet and extract a $50 bill, holding it out with what I hope looks like desperate gratitude rather than a bribe. "I know it's an unusual request, and I really appreciate your time." The older worker takes the 50, glances at his partner, who shrugs and says, "Once it's on the truck, it's public property anyway. Go ahead, but make it quick. We're on a schedule." I thank them profusely and pull on the latex gloves I'd hidden in my jacket pocket. Rebecca's trash bin is full, but not overflowing. She must have put it out last night as usual. I start sorting through the contents methodically, trying not to think too hard about the fact that I'm elbow deep in my sister's garbage. There are food containers from takeout restaurants, junk mail addressed to Rebecca Miller, empty wine bottles, used paper towels, coffee grounds, all the normal detritus of someone's daily life. Then about halfway down the bin, buried under a layer of food waste that smells like rotting vegetables, I find a crumpled piece of paper. I pull it out carefully and smooth it flat, and my heart nearly stops. It's a receipt from AutoZone dated 3 weeks ago, 4 days before Rebecca brought that soup to my house. The purchase listed is simple and damning: 1-gallon Peak antifreeze paid in cash, $37.49. My hands are shaking so badly I almost drop the receipt. I take several photographs of it with my phone from different angles, making sure the date and item description are clearly visible, then carefully place it into one of the evidence bags. But I keep digging because if the receipt is here, maybe there's more. And there is. Wrapped in a plastic grocery bag and shoved near the bottom of the bin, I find the empty antifreeze container itself. Peak brand 1 gallon, the same bright yellow bottle with red warning labels that I've seen in 1,000 garages. But this one is empty, the cap still attached, a few drops of bright green liquid still visible inside when I hold it up to the early morning light. Rebecca bought antifreeze 3 weeks ago. She used it to poison the soup she brought to my house. And then she threw away the evidence in her household trash, either because she was confident Daniel's death would be ruled natural causes, or because she was too arrogant to think anyone would ever check. The casual disposal of murder evidence speaks to a level of callousness that makes me physically ill. I photograph the bottle from every angle, then place it in a separate evidence bag. I thank the sanitation workers again, tell them they've been incredibly helpful, and walk back to my car on legs that feel like they might give out at any moment. As I start the engine and begin driving away, I check my rearview mirror out of habit. Rebecca is standing in her doorway, a coffee mug in one hand, wearing a bathrobe. She's watching my car drive down the street, and even from this distance, I can see that her expression is unreadable. Not alarmed, not confused, just watching with an intensity that makes my skin crawl. She knows I was there, and now she knows I'm coming for her. I drive straight from Rebecca's neighborhood to Morgan Industries headquarters, the evidence bags locked in my trunk. It's only 8:30 a.m., but I need the normalcy of my office, the familiar routines of work, something to anchor me while my entire world spins out of control. I park in my reserved spot and walk through the lobby with my head high, nodding to the security guard who offers condolences about Daniel that I barely hear. I just need to get to my office, close the door, and figure out my next move. But I don't even make it past my assistant's desk before Carol intercepts me. She's been with Morgan Industries for 20 years, started as a receptionist, and worked her way up to executive assistant, and she's unfailingly loyal and perceptive. Right now, her face is tight with concern, and she gestures urgently for me to follow her into my private office, rather than speaking in the open workspace. The moment the door closes behind us, Carol turns to me and says quietly, "Monica, you need to know something. Your parents were here yesterday afternoon." She glances toward the door as if afraid someone might overhear. They held a closed-door meeting with 3 board members in the executive conference room: Harrison, Steinberg, and Morrison. I wasn't invited, you weren't informed, and they specifically requested that I not mention it to you. My stomach drops. What were they discussing? Carol's expression is troubled, and I can tell she's uncomfortable being the bearer of this news, but knows I need to hear it. I walked past the conference room around 3 p.m. to deliver some documents Harrison had requested earlier. The door wasn't completely closed, and I heard part of the conversation. Your mother was talking about leadership transitions and Monica's inability to cope with personal tragedy. She was telling the board members that you're too grief-stricken to continue as interim CEO, that the company needs stable leadership during the merger negotiations. The words hit me like a physical blow. Patricia is using Daniel's death, the death she orchestrated, to argue that I'm unfit for my position. The audacity of it, the calculated cruelty, takes my breath away. Did anyone push back? Did any of the board members defend me? Harrison seemed uncomfortable with the whole conversation, Carol says. But Steinberg and Morrison were nodding along, asking questions about succession protocols. Monica, they're building a narrative. They're setting you up to be removed. I sink into my desk chair, my mind racing. This is why they poisoned me instead of just killing me outright. A sudden death would trigger investigations, questions, complications. But if I'd become mysteriously ill, hospitalized for weeks, unable to perform my duties during a critical merger, the board would have had legitimate grounds to replace me. And with me incapacitated and unable to defend myself, Rebecca could have stepped into the role with Patricia pulling the strings behind the scenes. There's more, Carol continues, her voice dropping even lower. Rebecca has been coming to headquarters almost every day for the past 3 weeks. You know, her role doesn't require that she usually works remotely or she's out meeting clients. But she's been here constantly, and not in her own office. She's been seen in the legal department, in the executive records room, even trying to access your grandfather's private office. What's she looking for? I ask, though I'm starting to form a sickening picture. I asked Jennifer in legal very casually what Rebecca needed. She said Rebecca was reviewing documents related to succession planning and corporate bylaws, specifically the protocols for removing a CEO due to incapacity or poor performance. Carol pauses. Monica, she's researching how to take your job. Everything clicks into place with horrible clarity. This wasn't just about making me sick. It was about creating a corporate crisis that would justify my removal, then having Rebecca ready to step into the position with all the legal knowledge necessary to make the transition smooth. Patricia has been planning this for months, maybe longer. The poison was just one part of a larger scheme to steal everything my grandfather built and hand it to Rebecca. I need to talk to Leonard Shaw, I say, standing abruptly. My grandfather's attorney. Is he in the building? He's on the 3rd floor, Carol confirms. But Monica, be careful. I don't know who you can trust right now. I take the elevator down to the legal offices and find Leonard in his corner office reviewing contracts. He's 72 years old, silver-haired and dignified, and he's been my grandfather's attorney and friend for 35 years. If anyone knows what's really happening with the company succession, it's Leonard. Monica, he says, standing when I enter. I'm so deeply sorry about Daniel. How are you holding up? Leonard, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to be honest with me, even if it's confidential. Is my family trying to manipulate my grandfather's will? His expression shifts from sympathy to discomfort, and I know I've hit a nerve. He gestures for me to close the door and sit down. I shouldn't discuss your grandfather's estate planning with you, he begins carefully. But given the circumstances and my concern for Thomas's wishes being honored, I'll tell you what I can. He pulls out a file from his desk drawer, handling it like it contains explosives. 3 months ago, before his health scare, your grandfather came to me with instructions to revise his will and estate plan. He wanted to name you permanent CEO and grant you controlling interest in Morgan Industries. He was very clear about his reasoning. You've demonstrated the business acumen, integrity, and dedication the company needs. Rebecca, he felt, was not suited for that level of responsibility. But the changes haven't been finalized, I ask, already knowing the answer. No. Your grandfather's hospitalization interrupted the process, and since then, Patricia has been visiting him almost daily, pressuring him to reconsider. She's been using emotional manipulation, telling him that favoring one granddaughter over another will tear the family apart, that he's being unfair to Rebecca, that his favoritism has caused lifelong damage. Leonard's voice hardens. I've tried to speak with Thomas privately about completing the will revision, but Patricia has somehow made herself his primary visitor and healthcare proxy. She controls who sees him and when. The full scope of the conspiracy crystallizes in my mind. Poison me to create a leadership vacuum. Use my incapacitation to install Rebecca as CEO. Manipulate my grandfather into either not changing his will or changing it to favor Rebecca. Control a multi-million-dollar company through Rebecca, who Patricia has been manipulating her entire life. It's not just about corporate ambition, it's about power control and the decades of resentment Patricia has harbored toward me. My phone rings, shattering the heavy silence in Leonard's office. The caller ID shows it's the hospital where my grandfather has been receiving treatment. My hand trembles as I answer. Mrs. Morgan. The voice on the other end is urgent, clinical. This is Dr. Patterson from St. Mary's Hospital. You need to come immediately. Your grandfather has been rushed to intensive care. He's experiencing acute kidney failure. The symptoms are identical to what your son presented. The phone nearly slips from my hand as Dr. Patterson's words register. Acute kidney failure. Symptoms identical to Daniel's. My grandfather is being poisoned too, and I should have seen it weeks ago. I'm on my feet before I consciously decide to move, grabbing my purse and car keys, while Leonard stares at me in confusion. "It's my grandfather," I manage to say. "I have to go." I'm already out this door, running toward the elevator, my mind racing faster than my feet. Thomas Morgan was hospitalized 5 weeks ago with what doctors called sudden onset kidney problems related to age and stress. But he's 71 and was healthy before that, playing golf twice a week, sharp as ever in board meetings. The hospitalization came out of nowhere, and he'd been improving slowly until about 2 weeks ago when he started deteriorating again. Doctors attributed it to complications to his age, to the stress of his body fighting the initial illness. But it wasn't complications. It was ethylene glycol, the same poison that killed my son, being administered slowly and methodically over weeks. They've been poisoning him to ensure he can't finalize the will changes that would give me controlling interest in the company. And if he dies before those changes are made, the old will stands the one that splits everything between Rebecca and me, which Patricia can manipulate through Rebecca. I'm in my car pulling out of the parking garage with tires squealing before I remember to call Dr. Cole. He answers on the first ring, and I explain the situation in clipped, urgent sentences. My grandfather, acute kidney failure. Same symptoms as Daniel. They're poisoning him too. I'm 20 minutes from St. Mary's, Dr. Cole says immediately. I'll meet you there. Don't let them give him anything to eat or drink until we can test for ethylene glycol. The drive to the hospital takes 15 minutes that feel like 15 hours. I keep thinking about my recent visits to see my grandfather, how weak he seemed, how confused. 3 weeks ago, he'd asked me the same question twice in 5 minutes, couldn't remember what day it was. I'd attributed it to age and illness, but confusion and disorientation are symptoms of ethylene glycol poisoning. The toxin affects neurological function as it metabolizes. He was already being poisoned when I visited him, and I didn't recognize it because I had no reason to suspect my own family of attempted murder. I burst through the ICU entrance at St. Mary's and demand to see Thomas Morgan. The nurse at the desk recognizes me from previous visits and waves me through, her face grave. He's in critical condition, Mrs. Morgan. Dr. Patterson is with him now. I find my grandfather in ICU bed 7, and my heart breaks at the sight of him. He looks decades older than the last time I saw him just 4 days ago. His skin has a grayish pallor, his breathing is labored even with oxygen support, and machines surround him beeping and whirring. Dr. Patterson is adjusting IV lines, his expression troubled. "Mrs. Morgan," he says when he sees me. "I'm glad you're here. Your grandfather's kidney function has declined dramatically in the past 12 hours. We've started emergency dialysis. But I have to be honest, at his age, this level of acute failure is extremely dangerous. Dr. Patterson, I need you to test him for ethylene glycol poisoning." I say, my voice shaking but firm. My son died 3 weeks ago from ethylene glycol poisoning. Someone in my family is responsible. I believe they're poisoning my grandfather as well. The doctor's expression shifts from concern to shock. That's a serious accusation. What makes you think? His symptoms match my son's exactly, and I need you to test any food or drink that's been brought to him by family members. Specifically, smoothies. My sister has been visiting him, hasn't she? Dr. Patterson exchanges glances with the ICU nurse standing nearby. Yes, the nurse says slowly. Rebecca Morgan has been coming daily for the past 3 weeks, usually around 10 a.m. She brings homemade smoothies. She said hospital food wasn't nutritious enough for his recovery. My stomach turns. Where are those smoothies? Do you still have any? The nurse nods. There's one in his room refrigerator from yesterday morning. He only drank half of it before falling asleep. I need that tested immediately for ethylene glycol, I say. And I need my grandfather treated as a poisoning victim right now. Every minute counts. Dr. Patterson makes a decision. Get me that smoothie. I'm calling our toxicology lab for an emergency analysis. He turns to me. Mrs. Morgan, if what you're saying is true, this is a criminal matter. I'll need to contact police. I know. My medical examiner is on his way here now, but please save my grandfather first. He's the only family I have left who isn't trying to kill me. The next 2 hours are a blur of medical personnel rushing in and out, machines being adjusted, IV bags being changed. Dr. Cole arrives and confers with Dr. Patterson, reviewing Thomas's charts with increasingly dark expressions. The smoothie is sent to the lab with rush priority. Dr. Cole orders fomepizole administered immediately, the antidote for ethylene glycol poisoning, explaining that even if the test results aren't back yet, the treatment won't harm Thomas if we're wrong, but delaying could kill him if we're right. I sit beside my grandfather's bed, holding his frail hand, and whisper things I need him to hear, even if he can't respond. I know what they did. I know what they're doing. Patricia and Rebecca have been poisoning you to stop you from changing your will. They poisoned Daniel too. He's gone, grandfather. Our sweet Daniel is gone because they wanted to poison me and he ate it instead. My voice breaks, but I continue. I promise you, I swear on Daniel's memory, I'm going to stop them. I'm going to make them pay for every single thing they've done. Just hold on. Please hold on. Thomas's eyes flutter slightly and his fingers twitch in my hand, but he doesn't wake. The monitors show his vital signs are weak but stable. Dr. Cole puts a hand on my shoulder. He's strong, Monica, and we caught this early enough that the antidote should help. If he's been poisoned for 5 weeks, his kidneys are badly damaged, but the dialysis is removing the toxins. He has a fighting chance. I sit vigil until nearly 2 a.m. watching my grandfather breathe, watching the machines track his struggling body's fight for survival. Finally, Dr. Cole convinces me to step out to the waiting room, get some coffee, clear my head for a few minutes. I'm pouring terrible vending machine coffee into a paper cup when a nurse I don't recognize approaches me, her expression troubled and uncertain. Mrs. Morgan, she says quietly. I'm Sarah, one of the night shift nurses. I thought you should know someone tried to get into your grandfather's room about an hour ago around midnight. A person wearing a baseball cap and surgical mask. They claimed to be family, but they weren't on the approved visitor list, and something about them felt off. When security asked for ID, they just turned and ran. We never got a good look at their face. The nurse's words echo in my mind as I stand there holding my terrible coffee. Someone tried to get into my grandfather's room at midnight, wearing a disguise, and they ran when confronted. Rebecca or Patricia, most likely. Maybe even Richard, though he seems more passive accomplice than active participant. They wanted to finish what they started, ensure my grandfather couldn't survive long enough to change his will or tell anyone what happened. The audacity of it, attempting murder in a hospital surrounded by witnesses and security cameras, speaks to their desperation. They know I'm investigating. They know their plan is unraveling. I thank the nurse and immediately arrange for a security guard to be posted outside my grandfather's ICU room 24 hours a day. The hospital administrator, now fully briefed on the poisoning situation, agrees without hesitation. No one gets in to see Thomas Morgan without showing government-issued identification and being on the approved visitor list. That list currently contains exactly 2 names, mine and Leonard Shaw's. Patricia, Richard, and Rebecca are explicitly barred. I don't leave the hospital until dawn, watching my grandfather sleep fitfully, the machines tracking his slow improvement as the fomepizole and dialysis work to clear the poison from his system. Dr. Cole assures me he's stabilizing, that we caught it in time, but the kidney damage is severe and may be permanent. At 71, recovery will be long and uncertain, but he's alive and that's what matters. I drive home as the sun rises, exhausted beyond measure, but too wired to sleep. My phone rings as I'm pulling into my driveway and Dr. Cole's name appears on the screen. It's barely 7 a.m. This can't be good news. "Monica, we have a problem," he says without preamble. "Your father called my office an hour ago requesting a full copy of Daniel's toxicology report and autopsy findings. He claims it's for family closure to help everyone understand what happened medically." My grip tightens on the steering wheel. "What did you tell him?" "That the reports are still pending final review, and I'll send copies to all family members once everything is complete." It bought us some time, but Monica, this is a clear signal. They know you have information. They're trying to find out what evidence exists and how much we know. "My father barely spoke to me at the funeral," I say, my voice hollow. "He's never asked about Daniel's medical details. This is Patricia working through him, trying to get intelligence." "I agree. Be careful." "And Monica, the toxicology on your grandfather's smoothie came back. Ethylene glycol concentrations similar to what we found in Daniel. They've been poisoning him for weeks." We end the call, and I sit in my car feeling the net tightening around me from all sides. They know I'm investigating. They're trying to get ahead of whatever I might discover. And judging by the midnight attempt to access my grandfather's room, they're willing to take significant risks to silence anyone who could expose them. When I finally walk into Morgan Industries later that morning, having showered and changed but looking as exhausted as I feel, the atmosphere feels different. People's eyes slide away from mine. Conversations pause when I pass. In the elevator, two executives who normally greet me warmly offer only tight, uncomfortable smiles. My longtime colleague, David Harrison, stops me in the hallway outside my office. He's been with the company almost as long as my grandfather, a steady presence I've always trusted. But now his expression is careful, almost pitying. "Monica, I wanted to check in on you," he says gently. "Your mother mentioned you've been under tremendous stress. If you need to take some time off, step back from the CEO role for a few weeks, no one would blame you. We all understand what you're going through." The concern in his voice sounds genuine, but the message is clear. People are talking about me questioning my stability. "Did Patricia call you directly?" I ask, keeping my voice neutral. He looks uncomfortable. "She reached out to a few board members. She's worried about you, Monica. She said you've been making some concerning statements, becoming paranoid about family members. She thinks the grief is affecting your judgment." I feel a flash of rage so intense I have to dig my fingernails into my palms to keep my expression calm. Patricia is systematically poisoning my reputation the same way she poisoned my son. She's building a narrative, poor Monica, so devastated by Daniel's death that she's having a breakdown, imagining conspiracies, unable to distinguish reality from grief-induced delusion. It's brilliant, really. When I start making accusations, when I present evidence that my family murdered Daniel, everyone will interpret it through the lens she's creating now. They'll see a mentally unstable woman lashing out at her family in misplaced anger, not a woman exposing the truth. "I appreciate your concern, David," I say carefully. "But I'm fine. I'm dealing with my grief and I'm perfectly capable of fulfilling my duties here." He nods, but I can see he doesn't entirely believe me. The seed of doubt has been planted. How many other board members has Patricia contacted? How many people at this company now think I'm on the verge of a breakdown? I retreat to my office and close the door, my mind racing. I have evidence, the toxicology reports, the fingerprints, the antifreeze receipt, the security footage showing Rebecca's suspicious behavior, the proof my grandfather is being poisoned. But if I go to the police now, Patricia's lawyers will tear my credibility apart. They'll present me as a grief-stricken woman having a psychotic break, seeing murder where there was only tragedy. The evidence can all be explained away. Rebecca visited Monica's house because they're sisters. Fingerprints are expected. The antifreeze purchase was for Rebecca's car. The security system malfunction was coincidental. I need more than circumstantial evidence. I need proof of conspiracy, of premeditation, of the full scope of their plan. I need something so incontrovertible that no lawyer can spin it and no one can dismiss it as the delusions of a grieving mother. My phone buzzes with an alert from my Ring security app. Someone has just logged into my home security system remotely. The notification shows the IP address, and my blood runs cold, as I recognize it the same address James traced before registered to Patricia and Richard's house. Someone, almost certainly my mother, is accessing my home cameras right now, watching the live feeds monitoring my house in real time. They're not just trying to discredit me. They're actively surveilling me, tracking my movements, watching for what I might do next. I spend the rest of that day at the office, moving through meetings like a ghost saying the right words, but thinking only about the surveillance, the conspiracy tightening around me, the way my family is systematically trying to destroy my credibility before I can expose them. When I finally go home that evening, I'm exhausted in a way that goes beyond physical tiredness. But sleep won't come. Instead, I find myself standing in the doorway of Daniel's room, staring at the space I've been avoiding for 4 weeks. His bed is still unmade from the morning I rushed him to the hospital, the superhero comforter twisted and pulled back where he'd thrown it off. His backpack sits by the door, homework still inside that will never be turned in. His drawings cover one wall, crayon masterpieces of dragons and spaceships, and the two of us as caped heroes. I've been unable to enter this room, unable to face the task of packing away his life. But now something pulls me forward. Maybe it's the need to feel close to him. Maybe it's the desperate hope that somewhere in this room there's more evidence I can use to destroy the people who took him from me. I start with the easy things, folding the clothes in his dresser, placing his shoes in a box. But when I kneel down to look under his bed, my hand closes around a plastic storage bin I'd forgotten was there. Inside are toys Daniel had outgrown but couldn't bear to part with, and beneath a stuffed dinosaur, I find his Apple Watch. It's an older model, a hand-me-down from when I upgraded mine 2 years ago. I'd given it to Daniel so he could listen to music and play simple games, and he'd worn it religiously until the battery died about 2 weeks before he got sick. I'd meant to charge it for him but got busy with work and forgot. The watch is completely dead now, the screen black and unresponsive. My hands shake as I find the charger in his nightstand drawer and plug the watch in. I'm not sure why I'm doing this. What do I hope to find? Photos of his friends. Voice memos of him singing along to his favorite songs. The thought of hearing his voice again fills me with equal parts longing and dread. After 15 minutes, the screen flickers to life with the white Apple logo. I enter his passcode, my birthday, and the watch face appears. I navigate through his apps with tears already streaming down my face. There are photos he took of himself making silly faces of me working at my desk of his drawings. His music library is full of Disney soundtracks and that ridiculous song about baby sharks he played on repeat. There are voice memos titled things like me singing and funny noises, and then I see 3 voice memos dated 8 days before his death. The same night, Rebecca brought the soup. My heart stops. I tap the first one with a trembling finger. Daniel's sweet, innocent voice fills the room. Mom's at work again on her computer. Aunt Rebecca just came with soup. She said it's for Mom because Mom is too busy to eat right. Mom works so hard. I love my mom. I press my hand to my mouth to muffle the sob that tears from my throat. He sounds so happy, so proud of me. I force myself to play the second recording, time-stamped 23 minutes after the first. I heard Aunt Rebecca on the phone in the bathroom. She was whispering really quiet, but I could hear through the door. She said, "It's in the soup, she'll eat it tonight, and then we wait." I don't know what that means, but her voice sounded weird, like when I lie about eating cookies before dinner. There's a pause, and I can almost see him processing, trying to understand what he overheard. Mom always says that medicine makes people sleepy because she doesn't like taking medicine. Maybe the soup has medicine in it. But Mom needs to work. She has that big meeting tomorrow. If I eat the soup instead and I get sleepy, that's okay. I'm just a kid. Kids can sleep a lot, and then Mom can work. No, I whisper, my vision blurring with tears. No, baby. No. But there's a third recording. The timestamp shows it was made 40 minutes after the second one. I don't want to play it. Don't want to hear what comes next, but I have to know. Daniel's voice is more uncertain, this time younger somehow. I'm gonna eat Mom's soup. I'm brave like superheroes. Mom always says I'm her brave boy. My tummy feels a little weird, but I'm okay. Heroes protect people. I'm protecting Mom. I collapse onto Daniel's floor, clutching the watch to my chest, and the sound that comes out of me is inhuman. He knew. My 7-year-old baby boy knew something was wrong with that soup, and he ate it anyway to protect me. He thought it was medicine that would make him sleepy, something a child could handle, but that would interfere with my important work. He didn't understand it was poison. He didn't know he was dying to save my life. I'm sorry. I sob into the empty room. I'm so sorry, baby. You were so brave and I didn't protect you. I didn't see the danger. I was so focused on work on that stupid CEO position, and you died trying to save me. I don't know how long I lie there on his bedroom floor, destroyed by the weight of his sacrifice. But eventually the grief begins to crystallize into something harder. Daniel's recording is more than just a farewell gift. It's evidence. Irrefutable, time-stamped, digitally authenticated evidence that Rebecca delivered poisoned soup, that she made a phone call to confirm the delivery, that she knew exactly what she was doing. I force myself to stand, to function, to think strategically, even though every cell in my body wants to collapse. I sync the watch to my laptop and make backup copies of all 3 recordings. I upload them to 3 separate cloud storage accounts. I email them to Leonard Shaw with the subject line, "If anything happens to me, give these to the police immediately." I download them to a USB drive that I'll keep in my purse at all times. Daniel's final act wasn't just heroic, it was evidential. He documented his own murder, and now I have the weapon I need to destroy everyone responsible. My phone buzzes with a text message. It's from Patricia. "Darling, your father and I are concerned about you. We'd like to come by your house tomorrow evening with Dr. Foster. She's a psychiatrist who specializes in grief counseling. We all think you need help." I stare at the message, understanding immediately what this is. Not an offer of help, a threat. They're escalating their gaslighting campaign, trying to have me declared mentally unstable before I can expose them. But now I have Daniel's voice, and they have no idea what's coming for them. I don't respond to Patricia's text. Instead, I sit in Daniel's room with his Apple Watch, the recordings backed up in multiple locations, and I make a plan. Tomorrow I'll take everything to the police, the toxicology reports, the fingerprints, the antifreeze receipt, the security footage, and now Daniel's recordings. It's enough. It has to be enough. But first, I need to check on my grandfather. It's nearly 10 p.m. late for visiting hours, but I've been granted unlimited access to his ICU room given the circumstances. I grab my jacket and purse the USB drive with Daniel's recordings tucked safely inside and head to my car. I'm 3 blocks from my house when I notice the silver sedan. It's the same car I've been seeing for the past few days, always in my peripheral vision. Never close enough to identify clearly, but distinctive enough to register silver 4-door sedan, possibly a Honda Accord tinted windows. I'd dismissed it as coincidence, the kind of pattern-seeking that happens when you're under extreme stress. But now, as I take a right turn toward the hospital, the sedan takes the same turn. When I change lanes, it changes lanes. When I slow down, it slows down. My heart rate kicks up, adrenaline flooding my system. Someone is following me, and they're not bothering to be subtle about it anymore. This is meant to intimidate, to let me know I'm being watched, that I'm not safe anywhere. I consider my options. I could drive straight to a police station, but what would I tell them? That a car is behind me on a public road. They'd dismiss it as paranoia, especially if Patricia has already been spreading rumors about my mental state. I could drive home, but that would reveal my security measures and potentially put me in more danger in an isolated location. Instead, I make a decision. I need evidence of this surveillance, and I need to lose this tale in a way that's smart and strategic. I take an unexpected turn into a residential neighborhood, driving slowly past houses with porch lights glowing. The sedan follows. I take another turn, then another, winding through streets in a pattern that makes no sense unless you're deliberately being followed. The sedan stays with me. Finally, I head toward the busiest commercial district in the city, an area that stays active 24 hours, with restaurants, bars, and all-night businesses. I pull into a well-lit gas station with multiple cameras visible and heavy customer traffic even at this late hour. The sedan hesitates at the entrance, and I can almost feel the driver's indecision, but then it follows me in parking on the far side of the lot away from the lights. I park directly under the brightest overhead lights surrounded by other cars and customers. I take several deep breaths to steady myself, then walk into the station with my phone recording video in my pocket, trying to capture the sedan's license plate as I pass, though the angle is wrong and the tinted windows make it impossible to see the driver. Inside, I approach the attendant, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, who's reading a magazine behind the counter. "I'm sorry to bother you," I say, keeping my voice low and calm, despite the panic clawing at my throat. "But I believe someone is following me, that silver sedan on the far side of the lot. Would it be possible to get a copy of your security footage from the last 15 minutes? I'm willing to pay whatever it costs." The woman, whose name tag reads Deborah, looks at me with sharp assessment. Whatever she sees in my face makes her decision. "Come around back to the office," she says, setting down her magazine. "Let me see what I can do." In the small back office that smells like stale coffee and cigarette smoke, Deborah pulls up the security system on an outdated computer. The footage is grainy but clear enough to show my car pulling into the station, followed seconds later by the silver sedan. She rewinds further, and we watch the sedan trailing my car through several turns before entering the lot. "That's definitely following behavior," Deborah says. She burns the footage to a disk and hands it to me. "No charge. I've got daughters. I know that look you're scared, but trying not to show it." She pauses, studying the frozen image of the sedan on her screen. "You know I've seen that car before. It's been parked here a few times over the past week, always in the same spot, just sitting for hours. And I'm pretty sure I saw it outside Morgan Industries on Tuesday when I drove past downtown. I noticed because it was in a loading zone, but nobody was getting in or out." The blood drains from my face. Morgan Industries. This isn't some random private investigator my family hired. This is someone connected to the company, someone who has access to the building, who knows my schedule and movements. This is coordinated surveillance from within my family's sphere of control. "Thank you," I managed to say. "You have no idea how much this helps." I return to my car and sit there for 30 minutes watching the sedan through my rearview mirror, waiting for the driver to give up. Other customers come and go. The night deepens. Finally, around midnight, the sedan's engine starts, and it pulls out of the lot, driving away slowly, as if making a point about leaving on its own terms, not because it was forced to. I wait another 10 minutes before leaving, taking a circuitous route home, checking constantly to make sure I'm not being followed again. By the time I pull into my driveway, it's nearly 3 a.m., and I'm shaking with exhaustion and leftover adrenaline. That's when I see the envelope taped to my front door. It's a standard white envelope sealed with no postage or address, just my name written in block letters. Monica. Someone hand-delivered this while I was gone. My hands tremble as I remove it from the door and open it inside my house with all the lights on and doors locked. Inside is a single photograph, and when I see what it shows, my blood turns to ice. It's me walking into the county medical examiner's office. The date stamp in this corner shows it was taken the day I received Daniel's toxicology report, the day Dr. Cole first told me about the ethylene glycol. Someone was watching even then. Someone photographed me entering that building, and they're letting me know they have evidence of every move I make. The message is clear. We know everything you're doing, and we're always watching. I don't sleep that night. How can I, knowing someone photographed me entering the medical examiner's office, knowing they're tracking my every move? I sit on my couch with all the lights on the photograph on the coffee table in front of me like an accusation, and I try to make sense of the escalation. They're not even pretending to be subtle anymore. The surveillance the photo delivered to my door, these are intimidation tactics meant to make me too afraid to act. But they miscalculated. I'm not afraid. I'm furious. When morning finally comes, I force myself through the motions of getting ready for work. I need to maintain appearances, need to seem normal and functional while I finalize my evidence and prepare to go to the police. I walk downstairs to the kitchen, planning to grab my car keys from the hook by the garage door, where I always keep them, and my steps falter. The keys are sitting in the middle of the kitchen table. I stare at them, my heart beginning to race. I have a very specific routine developed over years of living alone when I come home. I hang my keys on the hook by the garage door, every single time. It's automatic muscle memory. I can clearly remember doing it last night when I came home and found that photograph. I hung up my keys, locked the door, checked all the windows, and then sat in the living room for hours. So how did they get on the kitchen table? I walk slowly toward them as if they might be dangerous and pick them up with trembling hands. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe in my exhausted, terrified state last night I put them on the table without thinking. Maybe grief and stress are affecting my memory more than I realized. But I know I didn't. I know I hung them on that hook. I check the doors, still locked. The windows, still secured. My security system shows no unauthorized entries, no alarms triggered. Yet someone moved my keys, and the only explanation is that someone has access to my house that I don't know about. Over the next 2 days, more incidents occur, each one small and explainable individually, but together forming a pattern that makes me question my own sanity. I find the framed photo of Daniel that lives on my nightstand turned face down. I wake up at 2 a.m. to find the television on, tuned to static, the remote sitting on the couch where I know I didn't leave it. My laptop appears on the kitchen counter open when I'm certain I left it closed in my home office. A coffee mug. I never use a promotional mug from a conference I attended years ago, that normally sits in the back of my cupboard, appears on my bathroom sink, still wet as if recently washed. These aren't thefts. Nothing is missing. These are psychological attacks carefully calibrated to make me doubt my own perception and memory. Someone is in my house when I'm not here, moving things, leaving traces, creating chaos in my mind. And then there are the cognitive symptoms. I feel persistently foggy, like I'm thinking through layers of cotton. During board meetings, I struggle to focus on presentations I should find engaging. Words blur on pages. By mid-afternoon each day, I'm fighting to keep my eyes open despite sleeping reasonably well. It's the morning I get distracted by a phone call before drinking my coffee that I finally understand what's happening. I pour my usual cup, set it on the counter, and then my phone rings. James from IT with updates on the security system analysis. The call takes 15 minutes, and when I finally pick up my coffee to drink it, something makes me pause. The taste is slightly off. More bitter than usual, with a faint chemical undertone I've been unconsciously noting for days, but attributing to cheap coffee or a dirty pot. Instead of drinking it, I pour the coffee into a mason jar and seal it. Then I make a fresh pot using a brand new sealed bag of coffee from my pantry. I drink that instead, and for the first time in a week, my mind feels clear by afternoon. Sharp, focused. Someone has been drugging my regular coffee supply. I check the canister I've been using, the one that sits on my counter that I refill from the bulk container in my pantry. The coffee looks normal, smells mostly normal, but when I get close, there's a faint chemical odor underneath the coffee scent. Someone with access to my house has been adding something to my daily coffee, likely a sedative or anti-anxiety medication, something that would make me confused, tired, unable to think clearly. It's brilliant, really. Drug me to make me actually behave like someone having a breakdown while simultaneously moving things in my house to make me question my memory and perception. Create the reality of mental instability while also making me doubt whether that instability is real or manufactured. At work that day, the whispers have intensified. People's eyes slide away from mine in hallways. Conversations pause when I approach. Carol pulls me into my office with an expression of deep concern. "Monica, I need to tell you something," she says quietly. "3 different board members have asked me in the past 2 days if you're okay, and whether I think you're capable of continuing in your role. Your mother has been calling them, expressing worry about your state of mind. She told Harrison you've been making paranoid accusations about family members, that you're not sleeping, that you're behaving erratically." My hands clench into fists. I'm being set up. I know, Carol says. I can see it. But Monica, they're building a narrative faster than you can fight it. The board meeting is in 6 days. There's going to be a vote of no confidence unless you do something now. I feel the walls closing in from every direction. They're drugging me to make me seem unstable. They're gaslighting me to make me doubt my own mind. They're spreading rumors to destroy my professional reputation. And they're doing it all simultaneously, a coordinated attack designed to either drive me to actual breakdown or make it appear I'm having one. I leave work early, exhausted and overwhelmed, and drive home in a daze. When I pull into my driveway, I notice immediately that the lights in my living room are on, though I'm certain I left them off this morning. I walk to my front door with my hand on my phone, ready to call 911. The door is unlocked. I push it open slowly, and what I see makes my blood run cold. Patricia and Richard are sitting on my couch as if they own the place, and standing beside them is a well-dressed woman in her 50s, carrying a leather medical bag, her expression professionally sympathetic. "Darling," Patricia says, standing with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "This is Dr. Foster. We've arranged for an intervention. We're all very worried about you." For a moment, I just stand in my doorway trying to process what I'm seeing. My mother and father sitting in my living room as if they own it, which I realize with sickening clarity they must think they soon will. And this woman, Dr. Foster, with her professional smile and expensive suit, her medical bag placed carefully by her feet like a prop in a staged performance. "How did you get in?" I ask, my voice flat. "We still have the spare key you gave us years ago, darling," Patricia says, as if breaking into someone's home is a perfectly reasonable thing to do when you're concerned about their well-being. "We tried calling, but you didn't answer. We were worried." She gestures to the couch across from them. "Please sit down. We need to talk about how you're doing." I stay standing, every instinct screaming danger. Dr. Foster introduces herself, her voice professionally warm. "Mrs. Morgan, I'm Dr. Sandra Foster. I'm a psychiatrist who specializes in grief counseling and trauma response. Your mother reached out to me because the family is very concerned about your well-being following your son's tragic death." I notice the manila folder on my coffee table thick with papers. I notice the way Patricia's hands are clasped together, the picture of maternal concern. I notice the way Richard won't meet my eyes, his discomfort palpable. And I notice that Dr. Foster's opening statement frames me as a patient before I've said a single word. This is a trap, an elaborately staged trap. "I appreciate your concern," I say, carefully remaining on my feet, maintaining the psychological advantage of standing while they sit. "But I didn't ask for a psychiatric evaluation." "That's exactly why we're here," Patricia says, and I have to admire the performance. Her voice trembles just slightly, as if she's fighting back tears. "Sweetheart, please sit down. Let's talk about this calmly." When I don't move, she continues. "Monica, honey, you've been through something unspeakable. Losing Daniel has affected you in ways you might not even realize. We're all worried about you." Dr. Foster nods sympathetically, pulling out a notepad. "Grief can manifest in many ways, Monica. May I call you Monica?" She doesn't wait for permission. "Sometimes our minds create narratives to make sense of senseless tragedy. It's a coping mechanism, but it can become harmful if left unaddressed." I feel ice forming in my veins. They're setting up the narrative in real time, establishing that anything I say will be interpreted as grief-induced delusion. Patricia leans forward, her face arranged in an expression of concern that I now see is completely manufactured. "You've been making some concerning accusations lately, darling. Asking inappropriate questions about Daniel's death, obsessively reviewing medical reports. You've alienated yourself from family members who only want to support you. People at work have noticed you're not yourself. You seem paranoid, distracted, not sleeping well." She pauses, letting each item sink in. "And honey, Carol mentioned you were seen going through someone's trash. That's not normal behavior. Every accusation is technically true, but twisted into something pathological. Yes, I've been investigating Daniel's death because he was murdered. Yes, I've been reviewing medical reports because they prove he was poisoned. Yes, I went through Rebecca's trash where I found evidence she bought the antifreeze that killed my son. Mrs. Morgan, Dr. Foster says gently, what your mother is describing sounds like paranoid ideation, which is not uncommon in severe grief. Sometimes our minds try to assign blame to create an enemy. We can fight because fighting feels more empowering than accepting a senseless loss. Richard finally speaks, his voice weak. Monica, we just want to help. This isn't an attack. Isn't it? I ask quietly, my eyes on Patricia. My mother's expression doesn't change. She reaches for the manila folder and opens it, revealing forms with the letterhead of Mountain View Wellness Center. We've arranged for you to receive care at one of the best private psychiatric facilities in the state. Just 72 hours of rest and evaluation. You'll be in a safe, supportive environment where professionals can help you process Daniel's death in healthy ways. 72 hours. 3 days during which I would be locked away, unable to access my evidence, unable to meet with attorneys or police, unable to stop whatever Patricia and Rebecca are planning. 3 days during which they could manipulate the board-forged documents, solidify their control of Morgan Industries. And once I'm labeled mentally ill and institutionalized, any accusations I make about murder will be dismissed as psychotic delusions. It's brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. I force myself to stay calm, to think tactically. If I refuse too vehemently, I confirm their narrative, a paranoid woman rejecting help. If I sign those papers, I'm finished. I need to appear rational, cooperative, but ultimately non-committal. I slowly walk to the couch and sit down, picking up the admission papers and reading them carefully. Patricia's eyes gleam with premature victory. I can feel her certainty that I'm about to break about, to sign about, to give her exactly what she wants. You're right, I say finally, my voice measured and calm. I have been struggling. Losing Daniel has been the most difficult thing I've ever experienced. I set the papers down carefully. However, I think inpatient care is premature. I'd prefer to start with outpatient therapy. Surely that's the standard protocol, Dr. Foster, outpatient treatment before considering residential care. Dr. Foster looks slightly taken aback by my rational response. Well, yes, typically we would start with outpatient therapy unless there's an immediate danger to self or others. Have I threatened anyone? I ask calmly. Threatened to hurt myself because I haven't. I'm grieving, but I'm functional. I'm working, paying my bills, taking care of myself. Patricia's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. Darling, we're just trying to help you get the intensive support you need. And I appreciate that, I say, standing again. Why don't we schedule a proper evaluation appointment for next week, Dr. Foster? You can assess me in a clinical setting and we can discuss treatment options based on that evaluation. Right now, though, I have an important meeting I cannot miss. The room goes quiet. I can see the calculation in Patricia's eyes, the frustration that I'm not cooperating with her carefully laid plan. Dr. Foster glances between us, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding its source. That seems reasonable, Dr. Foster says slowly. Let me give you my card. Call my office tomorrow and we'll set something up. Patricia stands, her smile now rigid. Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable, darling. But her eyes are cold, and I know this isn't over. I excuse myself to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My hands are shaking violently now that I'm alone. I pull out my phone and open the recording app I'd started recording the moment I walked into my living room, the phone hidden in my jacket pocket. The audio file is crystal clear. I plug in earbuds and skip to the end, to the moment Patricia and Dr. Foster are gathering their things. I hear rustling footsteps, and then Patricia's voice speaking to Richard in what she must think is a whisper too quiet for me to hear from the bathroom. Once she's admitted, we'll have 72 hours to finalize the corporate paperwork. Get the board votes secured. After that, it won't matter if she gets out. The damage will be done. I save the file to 3 separate cloud accounts and send it to Leonard Shaw with the subject line, "Evidence of conspiracy to falsely commit me urgent." When I return to the living room, they're all standing by the door. Patricia kisses my cheek, her lips cold against my skin. "We love you, darling. Please take care of yourself." I watch them leave, watch Patricia's car pull away, and I know with absolute certainty that I'm running out of time. The moment the door closes behind them, I retrieve my phone from my jacket pocket and stop the recording. My hands are shaking so badly I nearly drop it. The file is over 30 minutes long, capturing everything from the moment I walked into my living room to find them waiting for me until the moment they left. I sit down on my couch, the same couch where Patricia and Richard sat just minutes ago, staging their intervention like directors of a particularly cruel play. I need to hear what they said when I wasn't in the room, when they thought I couldn't hear them. I plug in my earbuds, rewind the recording to the point where I excused myself to the bathroom and press play. For the first minute, there's just the rustling of fabric and the sound of my footsteps walking away. Then Patricia's voice, clear and sharp now that she thinks I'm out of earshot. "She's more resistant than I expected. I thought the drugs would have made her more compliant by now." Dr. Foster's voice responds professional and detached. "Without her voluntary signature, involuntary commitment requires demonstration of immediate danger to self or others. Has she made any threats? Expressed suicidal ideation, because what you've described to me doesn't meet the clinical criteria for emergency psychiatric hold." My stomach turns. Dr. Foster knows exactly what she's doing. This isn't a concerned psychiatrist being manipulated by a worried mother. This is a transaction. Patricia's reply is chilling in its casualness. "Not yet, but give her a few more days of the coffee additives and sleep deprivation tactics, and she'll have a breakdown we can document. Then we'll have grounds for involuntary commitment." A mental health professional witnessing an acute episode that would be sufficient, wouldn't it? Coffee additives. She says it so matter-of-factly, confirming what I'd already discovered. They've been drugging my morning coffee, deliberately inducing the cognitive symptoms they're using to argue I'm unstable. It's not just gaslighting, it's chemical manipulation of my mental state to manufacture the evidence they need. Then I hear Richard's voice, weak and uncertain. "Patricia, I'm not comfortable with this. What if Monica's right? What if Daniel's death wasn't—" Patricia cuts him off with a sharpness that makes me flinch even through the recording. Don't you dare finish that sentence. We've come too far. She's been asking questions, going through trash investigating. If we don't act now, everything falls apart. Do you want to lose everything? Do you want to go to prison?" Prison. She said prison. Which means Richard knows at least partially what they've done. Maybe he didn't know about the poisoning initially, but he knows now, and he's choosing to stay silent. Choosing complicity over conscience. The conversation continues, and what I hear next makes my blood run cold. Patricia's voice takes on a businesslike quality. "Dr. Foster, you'll receive the agreed-upon fee once she's admitted, and the 72-hour hold is in place. After that, we can extend her stay based on your professional evaluation of her deteriorating condition. How long do you think we can keep her institutionalized?" Dr. Foster's response is delivered with the cool professionalism of someone discussing a routine business arrangement. "I've done this for 3 other families in similar situations. It's quite effective. The patient is discredited, the family gains control of assets, and I provide the legitimate medical justification that protects everyone involved. Typically, I can extend the initial hold to 2 weeks by documenting progressive symptoms and recommending intensive treatment. After that, it becomes more difficult unless the patient actually deteriorates, which often happens once they're institutionalized. The stress of commitment can trigger genuine mental health crises. She's done this before, 3 other times at least. Dr. Foster specializes in falsely institutionalizing people so their families can steal their assets and control. She's a professional accomplice to what amounts to kidnapping and fraud, providing a medical veneer to family conspiracies. How many people has she helped destroy? How many innocent people are locked in psychiatric facilities right now based on her falsified evaluations? Just make sure the bank transfers are as untraceable as last time. Dr. Foster adds, "I don't accept checks or standard wire transfers, cryptocurrency or cash only." Of course, Patricia agrees. "I'll have everything ready by tomorrow evening. Once Monica is committed, How quickly can we move forward with the corporate transition? That depends on your attorneys, Dr. Foster says. But in my experience, once someone is institutionalized with documented psychiatric instability, their professional competence can be legally challenged almost immediately. If you have the board vote secured, you can have her removed from the CEO position within 48 hours. I hear footsteps, the rustling of papers being gathered. Then Patricia speaking to Richard. Once she's admitted, we'll have 72 hours to finalize the corporate paperwork. Get the board votes secured. After that, it won't matter if she gets out. The damage will be done. She'll be labeled mentally ill, and no one will believe anything she says about us. The recording continues with more mundane sounds, goodbyes being said, doors closing, cars starting. But I've heard enough. I've heard everything I need. I sit in my darkening living room listening to the entire recording 2 more times to make sure I haven't missed anything. Then, I set about preserving this evidence with the same methodical care I've developed over the past weeks of investigation. First, I upload the audio file to 3 separate cloud storage accounts, Google Drive, Dropbox, and a secure server James from IT set up for me. Each account has instructions that if I don't log in within 72 hours, the files will be automatically sent to a list of recipients: Leonard Shaw, Dr. Cole, the district attorney's office, and a journalist I trust at the local newspaper. Then I send an encrypted email to Leonard with the recording attached and a detailed summary of what's on it. Subject line: urgent. Evidence of conspiracy to illegally commit me and steal company control. If I go missing or am institutionalized against my will, release to police immediately. I make a backup copy on a USB drive that I'll keep on my person at all times, and another copy on an SD card that I hide in a different location in my house. Finally, I transcribe the key portions of the conversation, creating a written record with timestamps that will make the evidence easier to present to authorities or attorneys. When I'm finished, it's nearly midnight. I sit in my living room with all the lights off, watching the street outside for any sign of surveillance, and I think about what I've learned. Patricia and Richard are willing to drug me, gaslight me, and have me falsely institutionalized to steal what my grandfather built. Dr. Foster is a criminal who specializes in providing medical cover for family conspiracies. And somewhere out there, 3 other victims are possibly still trapped in psychiatric facilities based on her lies. This isn't just about Daniel anymore. This isn't even just about me or my grandfather or Morgan Industries. This is about a pattern of abuse, a system that wealthy families can exploit with the help of corrupt professionals like Dr. Foster. My phone buzzes with a new email notification. The sender is listed as anonymous@secureemail.com, and the subject line reads, "For Monica Morgan, urgent." I open it with trembling hands. The message is brief. Check your grandfather's safety deposit box at First National Bank. He added you as co-holder 6 months ago. The key is in his desk drawer at home, red envelope. You need to see what he's been keeping. A friend who wants justice for Daniel. I stare at the anonymous email for a long time, trying to understand who could be sending these tips. Someone knows what Patricia and Rebecca did. Someone has access to information about my grandfather's safety deposit box. Someone is helping me from the shadows, but why won't they reveal themselves? Are they afraid of Patricia? Or are they playing a longer game I don't yet understand? I'm still puzzling over this when another email arrives from the same anonymous address. This one is shorter, more urgent. You're looking at Rebecca and Patricia, but you're missing the doctor who's been covering for them. Check Thomas Morgan's medical records from the past 8 weeks. Dr. Pierce has been lying about his symptoms and delaying proper treatment. He's part of this. Dr. Thomas Pierce. The name hits me like a physical blow. Tom Pierce has been our family physician for more than 30 years. He delivered me as a baby, stitched up my knee when I fell off my bike at age 9, wrote my college health clearance forms, and was one of the first people I called when I found out I was pregnant with Daniel. He's been like an uncle to me, a constant presence in our lives, someone I trusted absolutely. But the email continues, and attached is what appears to be a forwarded message between Patricia and Dr. Pierce. The timestamp shows it was sent 3 weeks ago. Tom adjusts the medication records as discussed. We need his condition to appear natural age-related organ failure. Nothing suspicious. You'll receive your compensation as promised. Don't disappoint me. P. I read it 3 times, my hands trembling. Dr. Pierce has been falsifying my grandfather's medical records. He's been making it appear that Thomas is dying of natural causes when he's actually being poisoned. A doctor, someone sworn to protect life, is actively helping murder my grandfather. I don't sleep that night. Instead, I spend hours researching Dr. Pierce, looking for any connection to Patricia beyond being our family physician. At 3 a.m., I finally call Leonard Shaw, waking him up, not caring about the late hour. Leonard, I need you to hire a private investigator. Someone who can do financial forensics, trace money, find connections, and I need it done immediately. To his credit, Leonard doesn't ask questions. I know someone, James Martinez, former FBI, now does private work, discreet and thorough. I'll have him call you first thing in the morning. James Martinez calls me at 7 a.m., and by noon, he's in my office with a preliminary report that makes me feel physically sick. He's a compact man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a methodical way of speaking that reminds me of an accountant, except he's accounting for crimes instead of money. Dr. Pierce's medical practice was nearly bankrupt 15 years ago. James explains, laying out documents on my desk. A malpractice lawsuit and some bad investments in medical equipment. He was looking at closing his clinic, losing everything he'd built over 20 years. He slides a document toward me. Then a private investor appeared with a $400,000 loan at terms that were far too favorable for someone in his financial situation. No collateral, required interest rate well below market repayment schedule that gave him breathing room. Who was the investor? I ask, though I already know the answer. A shell corporation called Westridge Holdings, LLC. It took me a while to trace, but the corporation is owned by Patricia Morgan. She saved his practice, and since then Dr. Pierce has been essentially her asset. James pulls out more documents, bank statements, meeting logs, financial transfers. Over the past 3 months, Dr. Pierce has been visiting Morgan Industries headquarters, regularly meeting with your mother in her private office. That's unusual for a family physician with no business reason to be there. And look at this. He points to a bank statement. 2 weeks ago, Dr. Pierce received a deposit of $75,000 from an offshore account. I traced it back to the same shell corporation. He's being paid Monica. Paid very well. I sit back in my chair trying to process this. Patricia bought Dr. Pierce's loyalty 15 years ago, kept him on a financial leash, and now she's using him to help murder my grandfather. How long has she been planning this? Has she always seen our family physician as a tool she could use when needed? There's more. James says, his expression grim. I did some checking on Dr. Pierce's patient records, the ones that are publicly accessible through insurance databases. Your grandfather isn't the first Morgan family member whose medical records show inconsistencies. There are patterns going back years of medications prescribed without clear justification, diagnoses that don't quite fit symptoms. I think Dr. Pierce has been falsifying medical records for your family for a long time. I feel like the ground is shifting beneath me. How deep does this conspiracy go? How many years has Patricia been manipulating, controlling, using people like chess pieces? I thank James, pay him for his work so far, and ask him to keep digging. Then I call Dr. Cole and ask him to meet me at his office immediately. I need someone I can trust to review my grandfather's medical records, someone who will tell me the truth. Dr. Cole is waiting for me when I arrive, and I hand him the thick file of medical records I obtained through my legal right as Thomas's next of kin while he's incapacitated. He spreads them across his desk and begins reviewing them with the careful attention of someone who knows what to look for. These have been altered, he says after 20 minutes, his voice tight with anger. Look at these lab values for kidney function. Dr. Pierce documented a gradual decline over 8 weeks, the kind of pattern you'd expect from age-related organ failure. But these numbers don't match the hospital's independent tests at all. The hospital labs show rapid deterioration in a pattern consistent with toxic exposure. Your grandfather's kidneys weren't gradually failing, they were being destroyed. He points to another section of the records. And here, Pierce never ordered toxicology screening even when other doctors suggested it. He wrote notes actively discouraging investigation, patient symptoms consistent with age-related decline, no indication of external factors recommend conservative supportive care. He was preventing diagnosis while your grandfather was being poisoned. Can you testify to this? I ask. That these records have been falsified? Absolutely. This isn't just malpractice, Monica. This is conspiracy to commit murder. Dr. Pierce used his medical authority to cover up a crime and allow poisoning to continue unchecked. He's as guilty as whoever delivered the poison. I'm gathering the records to leave when my phone rings. The caller ID shows Dr. Thomas Pierce. My finger hovers over the decline button, but something makes me answer. Hello. Monica. His voice sounds strained, older than I remember. We need to talk. I know what your mother and sister did to Daniel. I need to tell you everything, but not over the phone. Can you meet me at my office tonight at 9 p.m.? Please come alone. If Patricia finds out I'm talking to you, she'll destroy me. Dr. Pierce wants to meet at 9 p.m. tonight, which gives me several hours. I could go straight to his office and confront him with what I've learned, but the anonymous email about my grandfather's safety deposit box nags at me. If Thomas has been collecting evidence, if he anticipated something like this might happen, then what's in that box could be the final pieces I need to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. I call Dr. Pierce back and tell him I'll be there at 9, then I drive to First National Bank. It's 4:30 p.m. and the bank closes at 5, so I barely make it in time. My hands are shaking as I approach the customer service desk and ask to access Thomas Morgan's safety deposit box. The manager, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, checks her computer. Yes, Mrs. Morgan, you were added as co-holder 6 months ago. Your grandfather specifically requested it. I remember because he came in personally to fill out the paperwork, which was unusual given his age and health at the time. He seemed very deliberate about it. 6 months ago. That was right around the time Patricia would have learned about his plans to change the will in my favor. He knew something was coming. He was preparing. The manager leads me to the vault, and together we retrieve the long metal box. She takes me to a private room and leaves me alone. My hands tremble as I lift the lid. Inside is a USB drive with a label in my grandfather's handwriting for Monica Insurance Policy. There's a sealed envelope marked "Open if I become incapacitated," and there are several printed emails neatly organized and paper-clipped together. I gather everything carefully, sign the access log, and rush back to my car. I can't wait. I need to see what's on that USB drive now. I pull out my laptop and plug in the drive, my heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. The drive contains multiple folders, each one labeled and dated. The organization is meticulous, exactly the kind of careful documentation my grandfather always insisted on in business. The folder titles alone tell a story: Patricia's financial manipulations, Rebecca's debts and leverage, Dr. Pierce, insurance fraud evidence, correspondence with personal attorney, and most damning of all, Patricia's conspiracy. I open that last folder first. Inside are email chains between Patricia and her personal attorney. Not Leonard Shaw, the family attorney, but someone named Marcus Brennan, who I've never heard of. The emails span 3 months, starting right around the time my grandfather announced his intention to make me permanent CEO. The first email from Patricia is dated exactly 93 days ago. Marcus, we need to discuss removing Monica from corporate leadership through any means necessary. She cannot be allowed to inherit controlling interest. I need options, legal, quasi-legal, whatever works. Discretion is essential. The attorney's response outlines several strategies, including challenging Monica's competence, manufacturing scandals, and creating situations that would force the board to act. But it's Patricia's reply that makes my blood run cold. Those are all too slow and too uncertain. I need something more direct. Rebecca is perfect for this. She's desperate, jealous, and completely under my control. I've spent 25 years ensuring she trusts me absolutely and resents Monica. She'll do what needs to be done, and if anything goes wrong, she takes the fall while I remain clean. I read that sentence 3 times, feeling sick. Rebecca isn't the villain I thought she was. She's a victim Patricia has been grooming and manipulating since childhood. My sister has been a weapon aimed at me for 25 years, loaded and waiting for Patricia to pull the trigger. The emails continue detailing Patricia's plans with disturbing precision. She transferred $50,000 to cover Rebecca's gambling debts. Gambling debts I never knew my sister had. That money bought leverage, bought control. She outlined exactly how to approach Rebecca, how to frame the poisoning as just making Monica too sick to work for a few weeks, how to ensure Rebecca believed she was helping the family rather than committing murder. Another email discusses Dr. Pierce. The good doctor has been my asset for years. He won't refuse my requests given what I know about his medical record falsifications for insurance fraud. I have documentation of at least a dozen cases where he submitted false diagnoses to insurance companies to increase reimbursement. One call to the medical board and he loses everything: his license, his practice, possibly his freedom. He'll do whatever I ask. Patricia has been building a network of people she controls through debt blackmail and manipulation. Rebecca, Dr. Pierce. How many others? Who else in my life is secretly answering to my mother? I open another folder and find recorded phone calls. My grandfather must have been recording his conversations with Patricia after he became suspicious. In one dated 2 months ago, Patricia's voice is venomous. You've always loved Monica more than Rebecca, more than me. You gave her every advantage, every opportunity, while the rest of us had to beg for scraps of your approval. Well, I'm done begging. I'm taking what should have been mine from the beginning. My grandfather's response is tired. Patricia, you're my daughter. I've never loved you less. But Monica has earned her position through hard work and integrity. Rebecca hasn't demonstrated the qualities needed to run this company. Because you never gave her the chance, Patricia screams. You decided 30 years ago who the winner would be, and you've been rigging the game ever since. I'm just evening the odds. I sit in my car listening to my mother's rage, understanding for the first time that this isn't just about money or power. This is about decades of perceived rejection, festering resentment, a wound that's never healed. Patricia sees me as the embodiment of everything she believes she's been denied, and she's willing to murder to correct what she sees as cosmic unfairness. With shaking hands, I open the sealed envelope. Inside is a letter in my grandfather's elegant cursive. My dearest Monica, if you're reading this, my worst fears have likely come true. Your mother, Patricia, has always been ambitious, but I didn't realize how deeply her resentment ran until recently. She has never forgiven me for loving your grandmother more than I could ever love her mother. My second wife, after your grandmother passed. She's never forgiven you for being my clear favorite grandchild. When I announced my intention to name you permanent CEO and leave you controlling interest in Morgan Industries, I saw something dangerous in Patricia's eyes. A cold calculation I'd only glimpsed before. She believes she's been cheated, that Rebecca has been cheated, and she's willing to do anything to correct what she sees as my favoritism. I've begun collecting evidence of her plans, but I'm old and tired. If something happens to me, you'll need this. Trust no one in the family except yourself. I'm sorry I didn't stop her sooner. I loved you like the daughter I wish I'd had. Thomas. Tears blur my vision. My grandfather knew. He tried to protect me, and now he's lying in a hospital bed, his kidneys destroyed by the daughter he tried to warn me about. My phone buzzes. A text from Dr. Pierce. Don't come to my office. Patricia knows I plan to talk. Meet me at Fletcher Park instead, North Parking Lot, 10 p.m. I'm bringing documents that prove everything. She's more dangerous than you know. I arrive at Fletcher Park's North Parking Lot at 9:45 p.m., early enough to scope out the area, but not so early that I'm sitting alone in the dark for too long. The park closes at dusk, so the lot is empty except for distant streetlights casting pools of yellow on the cracked asphalt. I park directly under one of those lights, the brightest spot I can find, and I make sure my phone is fully charged with 911 pre-dialed and ready. I have pepper spray in my jacket pocket and a recording device hidden in my purse already running. I don't trust Dr. Pierce, not after what I've learned, but I need his testimony. At exactly 10 p.m., a car pulls into the lot, not the luxury sedan I remember Dr. Pierce driving, but an older Honda that's seen better days. The headlights sweep across my car before shutting off, and Dr. Pierce gets out. Even in the dim light, I can see he looks terrible. The man I remember as distinguished and confident now appears haggard and decades older than his 62 years. His shoulders are hunched, his movements furtive, and he keeps glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to materialize from the shadows. He taps on my passenger window, and I unlock the door, keeping my hand near the pepper spray. He slides into the seat and immediately starts checking the mirrors, his hands shaking visibly. "I didn't want any of this," he begins without preamble, his voice hoarse. "You have to understand, Monica. I never wanted this, but Patricia has owned me for 15 years. The loan that saved my practice, it came with strings I didn't fully understand until it was too late." "What kind of strings?" I ask, keeping my voice neutral even though I want to scream at him. "Small favors at first, adjusting medical records for insurance claims to get better reimbursement rates. Nothing that hurt anyone," I told myself. Then it escalated. Writing disability documentation for Morgan Industries employees, Patricia wanted to push out. Prescribing medications without proper examinations for people she wanted, controlled or sedated. Each favor made me more complicit, gave her more leverage. By the time I understood what I'd become, I was trapped. He pulls out a manila folder from inside his jacket, his hands still trembling. 3 months ago, Patricia came to me with her plan. She wanted me to help poison you, Monica, not kill you outright. That would trigger too much investigation. But make you sick enough that you couldn't work. Couldn't think clearly. Couldn't fight back when the board removed you. And you agreed. I can't keep the disgust from my voice. I tried to refuse. His voice breaks. I told her I couldn't do it, that I'd taken an oath. She laughed at me. She pulled out a file this thick. He holds his fingers several inches apart. Documentation of every illegal thing I'd done for her over 15 years. Falsified insurance claims, fraudulent diagnoses, prescriptions for medications that were never medically necessary. She had dates, patient names, amounts billed, everything. She said one call to the medical board and I'd lose my license, my practice, probably go to prison. Then she offered me a deal, help her, and when Monica was removed, I'd get $500,000 and a seat on Morgan Industries board. Refuse, and she'd destroy me anyway. I feel sick listening to him try to justify his cowardice, but I need him to continue. Tell me about the poison, the dosage, how it was supposed to work. Dr. Pierce opens the folder, and I see copies of handwritten notes, calculations, email printouts. Patricia did research on ethylene glycol poisoning. She wanted something that would cause organ damage, kidney failure specifically, that would take weeks to recover from. She calculated the dosage for someone your size and weight, enough to cause acute kidney injury requiring hospitalization and dialysis, but not immediately fatal. The idea was that you'd be sick for months, unable to work, and the board would have to replace you. And Rebecca delivered it in the soup. I say flatly. Yes, I told Patricia that ethylene glycol has a bitter taste, but mixing it with tomato soup and herbs would mask it. I gave her the exact amounts. His voice drops to barely above a whisper. I didn't know about Daniel. I swear to you, Monica, I didn't know he'd be there, that he'd eat it. When I heard what happened, when I realized a child had died because of what I helped plan, he covers his face with his hands. I want to feel sympathy for him, but I can't. You helped poison my grandfather too. Patricia ordered me to. She said she needed him dead before he could finalize the will changes that would give you controlling interest in the company. I altered his medical charts to make it look like natural age-related decline. I discouraged other doctors from ordering toxicology. I'm a murderer, Monica. I'm a coward and a murderer. He pulls something else from his jacket, a small recording device, the kind worn clipped to a belt. But I'm not stupid. I knew Patricia would eventually see me as a liability. So for the past month, I've been recording every conversation I have with her. My heart starts racing. You recorded her. Everything. Her instructions about the dosing schedule for your grandfather. Her threats when I suggested stopping. Her discussions about Dr. Foster and the plan to have you committed. Her contingency plans if the poisoning didn't work fast enough. He hands me a USB drive. It's all here. Copies. The originals are in a safe deposit box at a bank Patricia doesn't know about. I take the drive with shaking hands. Why are you giving this to me now? Because I heard about the intervention she tried with Dr. Foster. I heard about the anonymous tips you've been receiving. I realized Patricia is escalating, getting desperate, and desperate people eliminate loose ends. His eyes meet mine, and I see genuine terror there. I'll testify. I'll tell the police everything. I'll plead guilty to whatever charges they bring. I just need you to promise me you'll make sure Patricia pays for what she orchestrated. She made me into a monster, but she's the devil herself. I'm about to respond when headlights suddenly flood the parking lot so bright I'm momentarily blinded. A car is speeding directly toward us, engine roaring. She followed me. Dr. Pierce gasps, his face going white. Drive, now. I slam my car into reverse and floor the accelerator just as the speeding vehicle reaches where we were parked. The impact narrowly misses my front bumper, and I can hear the screech of tires and smell burning rubber as whoever was driving realizes they've missed us. Dr. Pierce is already out of my car running for his Honda, and I see him peel out of the parking lot in the opposite direction. I follow his lead, taking a different exit, my heart hammering so hard I think it might burst through my chest. Later, when my hands finally stop shaking enough to use my phone, I call Dr. Pierce to make sure he's safe. He tells me he's driving directly to the police station to request protective custody. I have enough evidence against Patricia to bury her, he says, his voice still trembling. But I need to stay alive long enough to testify. I make him promise to give the police copies of everything, the recordings, the documents, all of it. Then I drive home with my doors locked and my eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror. 3 days pass. 3 days of hiding in my house, working remotely, jumping at every sound. 3 days of organizing evidence, consulting with Leonard Shaw and the district attorney's office, preparing for the moment when we can finally move against Patricia with overwhelming force. And then on the 4th morning, my phone rings with a call from the hospital. Mrs. Morgan, this is Dr. Patterson. I have remarkable news. Your grandfather has regained full consciousness. He's lucid, coherent, and asking for you specifically. I'm in my car before the call even ends, driving to the hospital, faster than his strictly legal hope surging through me for the first time in weeks. The foam-pizole treatments and aggressive dialysis have been working to clear the poison from his system, but the doctors warned me his recovery might be limited, that the kidney damage could be permanent. To hear that he's not only awake but lucid feels like a miracle I don't deserve. When I reach his ICU room, the security guard I posted checks my ID before letting me pass. Inside, my grandfather is sitting up in bed looking frail and decades older than the last time I saw him conscious, but his eyes are clear, sharp, aware. The moment he sees me, tears fill his eyes. Monica, my dear girl. His voice is weak but steady. I heard about Daniel. I'm so sorry. I should have acted sooner. I should have protected you both. I rushed to his bedside, taking his hand carefully to avoid the IV lines. You couldn't have known. None of us knew what she was capable of. But I did know, he says, and the weight of guilt in his voice nearly breaks me. I knew Patricia was dangerous. Maybe not the specifics, but I knew. I saw the signs for years and chose to ignore them. He gestures for me to sit in the chair beside his bed and glances toward the door. I need to tell you everything quickly. I've been awake for hours pretending to sleep waiting for you. Patricia visits every day around this time. We don't have long before she arrives and I can't let her know I'm coherent yet. I pull the chair close, my hand still holding his. Tell me everything. Patricia married your father when she was 23. Thomas begins, his voice gaining strength as he speaks. It seemed like a love match at the time, but looking back I realize it was strategic. She saw the Morgan name, the growing company, and she wanted to be part of it. I made it clear from the beginning that Morgan Industries would be led by merit, not by birthright. When you were born and showed brilliance even as a child, curiosity, leadership, integrity, I began grooming you to eventually take over. When Rebecca was born and showed none of those qualities, Patricia's resentment became visible. He pauses to catch his breath, and I can see how much this confession is costing him. I watched her manipulate Rebecca from the time she was a toddler. Little comments about how you got more attention, how I loved you more, how the family wasn't fair to Rebecca. I watched her poison your sister's mind against you year after year. I heard her make cruel remarks disguised as concern. I saw her systematically destroy your father's confidence and independence through psychological abuse until he became the shell of a man you see today. Why didn't you stop her? I ask, though I already know the answer will hurt. Because I told myself it was just difficult family dynamics, Thomas says, his voice breaking. I told myself Patricia was simply a complicated woman, that every family has tensions, that I'd address it later when the timing was better. I chose peace over protection. I chose avoiding confrontation over safeguarding you and Rebecca from her toxicity. Tears run down his weathered cheeks. I was a coward, Monica. And Daniel paid the price for my cowardice. If I had stopped Patricia decades ago, if I had removed her from positions of influence, if I had protected you children from her manipulation, Daniel would still be alive. This isn't your fault, I say, though I know he won't believe me, just as I struggle to believe it's not my fault either. 2 months ago, when I announced my intention to name you permanent CEO and grant you controlling interest in Morgan Industries, I saw something in Patricia's eyes that finally frightened me enough to act. Thomas continues. It was cold calculation, pure malice. I realized she was capable of anything, so I finalized a new will without telling her. He grips my hand tighter. Leonard has the only copy in a sealed envelope in his office safe. Everything goes to you, Monica. The company, the estate, all assets. Rebecca receives a trust fund enough to live comfortably, but nothing more. Patricia and Richard are completely disinherited except for their current home, which I purchased years ago. I also included a special clause if any challenge to the will is mounted, or if I die under suspicious circumstances, an independent investigation must be conducted before any assets are distributed. Does Patricia know about this new will? I ask, already knowing the answer. No. She's operating under the assumption that the old will is still in effect, the one that splits everything equally between you and Rebecca. Once she learns the truth, she'll become even more dangerous than she already is. His eyes meet mine with desperate urgency. We need to expose her and have her arrested before that will is read. If she discovers she's been disinherited, there's no telling what she might do. Before I can respond, there's a light knock on the door and a nurse enters looking flustered. Mr. Morgan, your daughter Patricia is here for her daily visit. Should I send her in? Thomas meets my eyes with shared understanding. We need to maintain appearances just a little longer. We're so close to having everything we need to destroy Patricia, but if she suspects he's recovered and knows everything, she might disappear or destroy evidence. Yes. Thomas says, his voice suddenly weak and confused, letting his eyes lose focus as if he's barely conscious. Send her in. I have no choice but to kiss his forehead and leave. As I walk toward the door, I pass Patricia entering the hallway. She's dressed impeccably as always, carrying a thermal container that I now know contains smoothies she's been using to poison her own father. Monica, darling, she says, her smile bright and completely empty of warmth. How is he today? The same, I lie. Still mostly unconscious. Her eyes search mine, and I see calculation there, suspicion. She knows something has changed even if she can't identify what. That's too bad. I do hope he recovers soon. We both know she hopes nothing of the sort. The 5 days between my conversation with my grandfather and the will reading are the longest of my life. Leonard Shaw sends formal notices to all relevant parties. The will reading for Thomas Morgan's estate will take place Friday at 10 a.m. in the Morgan Industries Executive Conference Room. The timing is highly unusual since my grandfather is still alive, but Leonard invokes the urgent provision clause that Thomas built into his will specifically for this scenario. When the patriarch is incapacitated and there are disputes regarding company leadership, the will must be read to clarify succession before corporate chaos destroys what he built. What Patricia doesn't know is that Leonard has quietly contacted the district attorney's office. What she doesn't know is that detectives will be waiting outside the conference room listening to every word. What she doesn't know is that her entire conspiracy is about to collapse around her. I spend those 5 days preparing with the thoroughness my grandfather taught me. Every piece of evidence is organized, documented, and verified for legal admissibility. Dr. Cole's toxicology reports on both Daniel and my grandfather, the security footage showing Rebecca's furtive behavior, the antifreeze receipt from her trash, Dr. Pierce's recorded testimony, and the devices he wore to capture Patricia's instructions. The emails from my grandfather's safety deposit box proving Patricia orchestrated everything. The recording of Patricia's fake intervention where she admits to drugging my coffee. And finally, most devastating of all Daniel's Apple Watch recordings, my 7-year-old son's voice documenting his own murder. I work with prosecutors to ensure the chain of custody is perfect, that nothing can be challenged or dismissed on technicalities. This has to be airtight. Patricia will have expensive lawyers, and I need evidence so overwhelming that no amount of legal maneuvering can save her. Friday morning arrives cold and gray, as if the weather itself understands the gravity of what's about to happen. I dress in a black suit, professional severe, appropriate for both a will reading and what is essentially a murder trial. I arrive at Morgan Industries early and set up my laptop and documents in the executive conference room, the same room where my grandfather has made countless business decisions over 5 decades. Today it will serve a different purpose. Patricia arrives first, as I knew she would. She's dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit, her silver hair perfectly styled, projecting confidence and control. She's brought her personal attorney, Marcus Brennan, the man whose emails I found in my grandfather's files. She sees my setup, the laptop, the boxes of documents, and something flickers in her eyes. Concern, maybe, or calculation. But she pastes on a smile and takes her seat at the head of the table as if she already owns this room. Rebecca enters next, looking nervous. She's lost weight in the past weeks, and there are dark circles under her eyes that makeup can't quite hide. She avoids looking at me entirely, taking a seat on the opposite side of the table. I notice her hands are shaking. Then Richard arrives, and this surprises everyone. He's not with Patricia. He enters alone, looking haggard and decades older than his 64 years. He doesn't have an attorney with him, which makes Patricia's head snap toward him with a sharp, questioning glance. He doesn't meet her eyes. He takes a seat away from her, and I see something in his posture, defeat maybe, or resignation, or possibly relief that this is finally ending. The board members file in confused about why they've been summoned to a will reading when Thomas is still alive. They murmur to each other, clearly uncomfortable with the strange circumstances. Finally, I enter and take my seat across from Patricia. Our eyes meet, and I see her trying to read me, trying to understand what I know and what I'm planning. I keep my expression neutral, carved from stone. I spent 5 days preparing for this moment. I'm not going to give her any advantage by revealing my hand early. Leonard Shaw calls the meeting to order, standing at the head of the table with the authority of someone who's been practicing law longer than I've been alive. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I understand the circumstances are unusual. Thomas Morgan is still alive, though incapacitated. However, he included a specific provision in his estate planning for exactly this scenario. When there are disputes regarding company leadership while the patriarch is unable to make decisions himself, this urgent provision allows for the will to be read to clarify his intentions and prevent corporate instability. Patricia leans back in her chair looking satisfied. She thinks she knows what's coming. She thinks this is a formality before she and Rebecca are named co-heirs to everything my grandfather built. Leonard continues. Before we proceed to the actual reading of the will, Mrs. Monica Morgan has requested permission to present information relevant to the testamentary intentions and the good character of potential beneficiaries. This is her legal right under the circumstances, and I have approved it. He looks at me and nods. This is it. The moment everything changes. I stand slowly feeling the weight of every eye in the room. I open my laptop and connect it to the large display screen at the front of the conference room. Patricia's expression remains carefully neutral, but I see her knuckles turn white as she grips the armrest of her chair. Before this will is read, I begin my voice steady and clear. There's something everyone in this room needs to know about how my son Daniel died and who has been trying to kill my grandfather for the past 3 months. I pause, letting that sink in. Several board members exchange shocked glances. Rebecca's face goes pale. Richard closes his eyes as if in pain. What I'm about to show you involves murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit fraud, and it involves members of my family. Patricia's face remains eerily calm, but I can see the calculation behind her eyes. She's trying to figure out how much I know, how much I can prove. She's already planning her defense, her counterattack. But she has no idea what's coming. She has no idea that I have everything. I take a breath and continue. 8 weeks ago, my 7-year-old son Daniel died. The initial diagnosis was acute kidney failure from an unknown viral infection. I display Dr. Cole's first report on the screen. That diagnosis was a lie. Daniel was murdered. He was poisoned with ethylene glycol over a period of 7 to 10 days. And the person who delivered that poison was sitting in this room right now. I let the weight of those words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. I display Dr. Cole's full toxicology report on the screen, the technical language made stark and undeniable by the highlighting of key phrases. Ethylene glycol detected at 487 milligrams per deciliter. Multiple metabolic markers consistent with exposure over 7 to 10 days. The concentration was precisely calculated for an adult woman weighing approximately 130 pounds, my exact weight. I look directly at Patricia as I say this. The poison was meant for me. It would have caused severe kidney damage, hospitalization for weeks, complete incapacitation, during the critical period when the board was evaluating my performance as interim CEO. But Daniel ate it instead, and his small body couldn't survive the dose that was meant only to disable an adult. I display the timeline on the screen, each date marked with clinical precision. Rebecca visited my home on this date with homemade soup, unusual because my sister doesn't cook and had never brought me food before. Daniel began showing symptoms 3 days later. Stomach pain, nausea, confusion. By this date he was in the hospital. 7 days after eating that soup, he was dead. I show photographs of the fingerprint analysis. These fingerprints were lifted from a glass found in my kitchen. They belonged to Rebecca. The glass contained residue of ethylene glycol mixed with orange juice. Rebecca makes a choking sound, her head still down on the table. Several board members are staring at her in horror. The antifreeze used to poison my son was purchased here. I display the receipt from AutoZone, the date clearly visible. 3 weeks before Daniel's death. Paid in cash. And the empty container was found in Rebecca's trash, poorly hidden, as if she never imagined anyone would look. I show the photographs I took that morning at the garbage truck, each piece of evidence carefully documented. The evidence is methodical, irrefutable, building brick by brick into a structure of guilt that cannot be denied. But I'm not done. Not nearly done. My son wasn't supposed to die, I say, and now my voice finally cracks with the emotion I've been holding back. I was the target. But Daniel suspected something was wrong. I take a breath to steady myself. He left behind evidence that breaks my heart and proves exactly what happened. I play the Apple Watch recordings. The room fills with Daniel's sweet, innocent 7-year-old voice. Mom's at work again on her computer. Aunt Rebecca just came with soup. She said it's for Mom because Mom is too busy to eat right. Mom works so hard. I love my mom. I hear someone sob, one of the board members maybe, or Carol from her position by the door. But I force myself to continue to the second recording. I heard Aunt Rebecca on the phone in the bathroom. She was whispering really quiet, but I could hear through the door. She said, "It's in the soup, she'll eat it tonight, and then we wait." I don't know what that means, but her voice sounded weird. Like when I lie about eating cookies before dinner. Mom always says that medicine makes people sleepy because she doesn't like taking medicine. Maybe the soup has medicine in it. But Mom needs to work, she has that big meeting tomorrow. If I eat the soup instead and I get sleepy, that's okay. I'm just a kid. Kids can sleep a lot. And then Mom can work. By now, half the room is crying. Rebecca is sobbing uncontrollably into her arms. But I play the final recording, Daniel's voice uncertain, but determined. I'm gonna eat Mom's soup. I'm brave like superheroes. Mom always says I'm her brave boy. My tummy feels a little weird, but I'm okay. Heroes protect people. I'm protecting Mom. The silence after the recording ends is absolute. Even Patricia seems momentarily shaken, though she recovers quickly. Richard is staring at her with an expression of absolute horror, as if he's seeing his wife clearly for the first time in decades. My son saved my life by dying in my place. I say, my voice steady now, forged into steel by grief and rage. And he recorded his killer in the act. But I'm not finished. Rebecca was the weapon, but she wasn't the mind behind this. I display the emails from my grandfather's safety deposit box showing Patricia's instructions to Rebecca, the payments to cover her gambling debts, the decades of manipulation. I play Dr. Pierce's recordings of Patricia giving him detailed instructions about poisoning my grandfather, about adjusting medical records, about the psychiatric institutionalization plan. I play the recording from the intervention attempt, Patricia's voice crystal clear. Once she's admitted, we'll have 72 hours to finalize the corporate paperwork. The evidence is overwhelming, undeniable, crushing. And as I present each piece, I watch Patricia's carefully constructed facade begin to crack. Then Richard does something I didn't expect. He stands, his voice shaking so badly he can barely speak. I didn't know. I swear to God, Monica, I didn't know about the poisoning. Patricia told me it was just corporate maneuvering, convincing the board you were too grief-stricken to lead. His hands tremble as he pulls a USB drive from his pocket. Here, these are all the emails Patricia sent me. You'll see she never mentioned poison, never mentioned murder. She lied to me too. I thought we were just politicking, not killing children. He turns to Patricia, his face twisted with grief and rage. You murdered my grandson, and you let me believe it was an accident. Patricia stands slowly, her face transforming from shock to cold, calculating fury. Before anyone can stop her, she looks directly at me and speaks. You think you've won, fine. You have evidence. You can destroy me. But ask yourself, Monica, do you really want the world to know all of this? Every news outlet will call Daniel the poison murder victim. The Morgan name will be synonymous with family murder. The company will collapse. Hundreds will lose their jobs. And your precious son will forever be remembered as the boy whose grandmother killed him. Is that the legacy you want for Daniel? Patricia's words hang in the air like poison, and I see several board members shift uncomfortably in their seats. She's playing her final card, and it's a powerful one. The room is silent as everyone waits for my response, and I notice 2 detectives have quietly entered and are standing by the door listening. Patricia sees them too, and her expression hardens with the knowledge that she's cornered. But she's not done fighting. She moves to the head of the table, standing there like a CEO making a final pitch to save a deal. Monica, you've proven your point. You've beaten me. I'll concede everything. But let's be rational about what happens next. She gestures to the attorneys and board members. If you proceed with criminal charges, this becomes a media spectacle. Can you imagine the headlines, Morgan Industries matriarch poisons own grandson? The company stock will crater. Our competitors will move in like vultures. 500 employees counting on their jobs and pensions will suffer. This boardroom will turn into a circus of depositions and testimony that will drag on for years. Her voice takes on an almost reasonable tone, as if she's offering a sensible business solution rather than trying to escape justice for murder. Or we can handle this privately, the way powerful families have always handled their problems. Rebecca and I will resign from all positions immediately. We'll disappear from your life completely. I'll liquidate my personal assets $50 million into a foundation bearing Daniel's name. It will help children fund child advocacy programs do actual good in the world. She spreads her hands as if offering a gift. No criminal charges, no media exposure, no destroyed company. You win, Monica. You get everything: the company, the family legacy, and justice for Daniel through the foundation. Just quietly. I look around the room and see the conflict on people's faces. Leonard Shaw, my grandfather's attorney, looks deeply troubled. He's seen wealthy families make these kinds of arrangements before, and I can tell part of him thinks it might be the practical solution. Several board members are exchanging glances, clearly calculating the financial impact of a public scandal. Richard has his head in his hands, looking completely broken. Rebecca is still sobbing, but I see her lift her head slightly at Patricia's words, grasping onto the possibility of prison versus quiet exile, like a drowning person reaching for a rope. David Harrison, one of the senior board members, actually speaks up. Monica, think carefully about this. Patricia makes valid points about collateral damage. Sometimes discretion serves the greater good. You could honor Daniel's memory without destroying what your grandfather built. But then I look at Carol, my loyal assistant, standing by the door. Her expression is fierce, her eyes saying clearly, "Don't let her manipulate you again. Don't let her get away with this." I see a few other board members who genuinely loved my grandfather, and their faces echo the same sentiment. The room has become a jury, and I'm being asked to choose not just Patricia's fate, but how I define justice itself. The silence stretches on. Everyone is watching me, waiting. The weight of this decision is crushing. Part of me, the part that's exhausted and grieving and just wants this nightmare to end, can see the logic in Patricia's offer. $50 million could help thousands of children. The company would survive. Daniel wouldn't be forever remembered as a murder victim. But then I think of Daniel's face, his voice on that recording, "I'm protecting Mom." I think of my grandfather's letter telling me to trust no one but myself. I think of every woman who's been silenced, every victim told to stay quiet for the good of the family, every powerful person who escaped consequences because institutions mattered more than individuals. I stand and speak my voice clear and steady. When Daniel was 5 years old, he asked me why superheroes always fight bad guys, even when it's hard. I told him, because doing the right thing is never easy, but it's always worth it. Daniel remembered that lesson. When he thought I was in danger, he didn't look for the easy way out. He didn't try to protect himself. He ate that soup knowing something was wrong because he believed protecting the people you love matters more than protecting yourself. I turned to face Patricia directly. You want me to hide the truth to protect institutions and reputations? Daniel died for the truth, Mother, and I won't betray him by burying it. I look at the detectives standing by the door. Arrest them, all of it on the record. The world needs to know that justice exists even in families like ours, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Patricia's face transforms from calculated calm to pure, undisguised hatred. You stupid, sentimental fool! You've just destroyed everything Thomas built. The detectives move forward with handcuffs, but Patricia isn't finished. She leans toward me as they approach and hisses one final threat. You have no idea what you've unleashed. There are things about this family you don't know, secrets that will make you wish you'd taken my deal. Within minutes, the conference room transforms into something else entirely. The detectives step forward with handcuffs, and I watch as they approach Patricia Rebecca and Dr. Pierce, who had been brought in separately and was waiting in an adjacent room. The lead detective begins reading Patricia her rights in that flat official tone that makes everything feel suddenly, irrevocably real. Patricia Morgan, you are under arrest for the murder of Daniel Morgan. 2 counts of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, and unlawful restraint. Patricia's face is a mask of cold fury as the handcuffs click around her wrists. She doesn't fight, doesn't protest, just stands there radiating hatred so pure it feels like it could burn. Rebecca, by contrast, collapses completely. As the detective reads her charges, second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, she begins screaming through her sobs. Mom made me do it. She said it wouldn't kill anyone. She said it would just make Monica sick for a few weeks. I didn't want to. I never wanted to. Her cries echo off the conference room walls as they lead her out, and despite everything, I feel a flicker of something that might be pity. She was a weapon, not the hand that aimed it. Dr. Pierce is brought in from the other room already in handcuffs, looking like a man who's aged 20 years in a week. His charges ring out conspiracy to commit murder, practicing medicine to commit fraud, falsifying medical records. The maximum sentences are announced to everyone present. Patricia faces life in prison without possibility of parole. Rebecca faces 25 to 40 years. Dr. Pierce faces 20 to 30 years. As they're led out, Patricia turns and gives me one final look of absolute venom. No remorse, no acknowledgement of what she's done. Just pure hatred for the daughter who dared to expose her. Richard isn't arrested, but he's detained for questioning as a potential witness. I watch him being led away, shoulders slumped, looking more relieved than frightened. Later I'll learn that the evidence clearly showed Patricia manipulated him just as she manipulated everyone else, feeding him carefully edited information, making him believe they were engaging in corporate politics rather than conspiracy to murder. He's a victim of decades of spousal abuse and coercive control. He'll have to testify against his wife, but he won't face charges. The media explosion is immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, every news outlet is running the story. Morgan Industries' heiress exposes mother's murder plot, dominates the headlines. The bail hearing becomes a media circus, cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions. Patricia's expensive attorneys argue that she's a respected member of the community with no flight risk, but the prosecution presents the evidence methodically. The recordings, the premeditation, the offshore accounts that give her both means and motive to flee. The judge denies bail for all 3 defendants, and I feel something in my chest loosen slightly when I hear those words. They're not getting out. They can't hurt anyone else while awaiting trial. The Morgan Industries stock drops 23% in the first week, exactly as Patricia predicted. Some employees are angry about the turmoil, frightened for their jobs and pensions. But many more express support for my decision, thanking me for having the courage to expose the truth. I give interviews carefully framed, explaining that Daniel was a hero who saved my life, shifting the narrative from murder victim to brave child. The public response is overwhelming. Daniel becomes a symbol of innocent courage, and donations flood into the foundation I establish in his name. Then the investigation expands in ways I didn't anticipate. Dr. Foster, the psychiatrist who tried to institutionalize me, is arrested when her office is searched. They find evidence she's done this for at least 6 other wealthy families, helping them falsely commit relatives to steal estates and control businesses. She takes a plea deal, 15 years, in exchange for testimony and information about her other victims. Each case is being reinvestigated, and I realize that by refusing Patricia's private settlement, I didn't just get justice for Daniel. I potentially freed 6 other victims and prevented future ones. 3 weeks after the arrests, I'm working late in my office when my phone rings. It's my grandfather calling from his hospital room. "Monica, you need to come now. I'm strong enough to tell you something I should have told you years ago. It's about your grandmother's death and why Patricia has always hated you so much. It's not what you think." I drive to the hospital immediately, my mind racing with questions about what my grandfather could possibly tell me that would explain decades of Patricia's hatred. When I reach his room, I'm surprised to find him sitting up fully looking more alive and alert than he has in months. The dialysis and treatments have finally cleared enough toxins from his system that he seems almost like his old self, though frailer and visibly aged by what he's endured. "Sit down, dear," he says gently, patting the chair beside his bed. "I owe you the complete truth about our family. You've been fighting demons you didn't fully understand." He takes a breath and begins a story I've never heard before. "Your grandmother Elizabeth was the love of my life. She died when you were 3 years old, so you have no memory of her, but she adored you completely. You were her first grandchild, and she doted on you constantly, said you had her spirit and her strength." He pauses, his eyes distant with memory. "Patricia was my second wife. I married her 2 years after Elizabeth died, not for love, but because I was lonely and she was persistent and seemed to offer companionship. But Patricia knew from the start she'd never have what Elizabeth had, my complete devotion. She resented Elizabeth's memory, and by extension she resented you, because you were the embodiment of the family Elizabeth created." "But there's more," he continues, his voice dropping. "Elizabeth's will left a substantial trust fund, $15 million, to her biological grandchildren. You are her biological grandchild, Monica. Rebecca is not. She's Patricia's daughter through Richard, born after Patricia and I married. The trust matures when you turn 40, just 3 years from now. Patricia has known about this your entire life. Every bit of favoritism you perceived, every bit of hatred she directed at you, it was about money and legacy, but also about the fact that you represented everything she could never have: Elizabeth's bloodline, my genuine affection and financial security she couldn't control." The revelation helps me understand the depth of Patricia's pathology, but it's my grandfather's next words that bring tears to my eyes. "Daniel's death needs to mean something beyond tragedy, Monica. You've already ensured justice, but now let's ensure purpose." Over the following weeks, working closely with my grandfather as he continues to recover, I established the Daniel Morgan Foundation with a $25 million initial endowment from Thomas's personal assets, supplemented by contributions from employees and community members moved by Daniel's story. The foundation's mission is comprehensive, protecting children from family abuse, providing legal services to parents, fighting corrupt relatives, funding toxicology research to identify poisonings earlier, and supporting child heroes who've shown exceptional courage. Daniel's art teacher helps design the logo using one of his drawings, a child superhero with a flowing cape. At the foundation's launch, I give a speech to a room full of supporters, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "Daniel taught me that real heroes don't wear capes in comic books. They're 7-year-old boys who eat soup to save their mothers. They're people who choose truth over comfort, justice over convenience, and love over fear. This foundation will honor every child like Daniel, and it will protect children from the people who should love them but choose power instead." During the preparations for the foundation, I finally find the courage to clean Daniel's room properly, to begin the painful process of preserving his memory while allowing myself to heal. Tucked inside his favorite book, Where the Wild Things Are, I find an envelope addressed to Mommy in his careful 7-year-old handwriting. The date shows it was written 2 days before he died, before he ate that poisoned soup. My hands shake as I open it. Inside is a crayon drawing of the two of us as superheroes flying together, and a note that breaks my heart and heals it simultaneously. "Mom, you are my hero. You work so hard and you're so smart. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you. I want to help people like you help people. I love you forever and ever. You're the best mommy in the whole world. Love, Daniel. P.S. Keep going. You can do anything." I collapse onto his bed, holding the letter to my chest, sobbing, but also smiling through my tears. Daniel's faith in me, written before he even knew he'd have to be brave, becomes the anchor that keeps me moving forward. 6 months after the arrests on what would have been Daniel's 8th birthday, a package arrives at my office. Inside is a leather journal embossed with "The Morgan Family, the Next Generation." A note attached reads, "You've defeated the old poison in this family. Now write the new story, from someone who always believed in you." The mysterious journal sits on my desk for days before I finally open it to the first blank page and begin writing. It feels right somehow to document this journey while the trials unfold over the following year. Rebecca's trial comes first. She testifies against Patricia in exchange for a reduced sentence, and watching her on the stand, I finally see my sister clearly not as the villain I thought she was, but as someone who was groomed and manipulated from childhood. The jury sentences her to 15 years with possibility of parole after 12, acknowledging the coercive circumstances while holding her accountable for her actions. Dr. Pierce pleads guilty to everything and receives 20 years. His medical license is permanently revoked, and he'll spend whatever time he has left knowing he betrayed his oath to help people. But it's Patricia's trial that captivates the nation. She refuses to show remorse, sitting through weeks of testimony with icy defiance. When the jury returns guilty verdicts on all counts after just 4 hours of deliberation, she doesn't flinch. The judge's words ring through the courtroom. "Mrs. Morgan, you orchestrated the death of your own grandson in pursuit of money and power. You are a danger to society and your own family. I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." As she's led away, Patricia turns to look at me one final time, her expression neither hateful nor remorseful, just empty. Whatever humanity she once had is gone. 18 months after Daniel's death, my life has transformed in ways I never imagined. The board unanimously confirmed me as permanent CEO of Morgan Industries, and under my leadership we've implemented radical changes: transparency policies, ethics, training, family leave benefits that make us an industry leader. The stock price has recovered and continues climbing, but more importantly, the company culture has changed. People feel safe speaking up, valued as humans rather than just employees. My relationship with my father is slowly healing. Richard attends therapy weekly and has become an advocate for domestic abuse victims, sharing his story of decades under Patricia's control. My grandfather has recovered remarkably and serves as chairman emeritus, spending his time mentoring me and overseeing the foundation that bears his great-grandson's name. I've even started dating again, cautiously building a life that includes people who love me for who I am rather than what I represent. Therapy helps me process the trauma and forgive myself for the signs I missed. On a warm spring morning, I drive to the cemetery where Daniel is buried. This time, I'm not alone. 5 children accompany me, the first scholarship recipients of the Daniel Morgan Foundation survivors of family abuse who've shown exceptional courage. They each place flowers on Daniel's grave while I read from his letter, "You are my hero. Keep going. You can do anything." I look at these 5 brave children and say, Daniel was 7 years old when he made the hardest choice anyone can make to sacrifice himself to protect someone he loved. That's the kind of courage that changes the world. You've shown that same courage by surviving, by testifying, by choosing to heal rather than to hate. Daniel would be so proud to know his story helped you. As we walk back to our cars, I pause at Daniel's headstone. Daniel James Morgan, 2017 to 2024. The bravest boy who ever lived. Your sacrifice changed everything. I whisper my final words to him. I did it, baby. Justice for you. A foundation in your name. A better world because you were in it. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for teaching me what true courage looks like. I love you forever. The sun breaks through the clouds warm on my face, and I walk away knowing that Daniel's death wasn't meaningless. From the deepest tragedy came truth, justice, and a commitment to protect others from the poison that infected my family. That's his legacy. That's his gift to the world. This story teaches us that true courage isn't about being fearless, it's about choosing truth even when silence would be easier. Daniel showed us that real heroes protect the people they love no matter the cost. Monica proved that justice matters more than protecting institutions built on lies. Family isn't just about blood, it's about who stands beside you when everything falls apart, who fights for truth rather than convenience, and who loves you enough to demand you be your best self. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is expose the poison hiding in plain sight even when it destroys everything we thought we knew. If this story moved you, if Monica's courage inspired you, or if you believe that truth and justice matter, even when they're hard, please subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and exposing a painful truth? Your story matters. Share it with us.